Hey guys, this video contains images of and discussions on topics that some people might find upsetting. Please be kind to yourself and take a break if needed. The video will still be here when you get back. Also, if you like this video, then please consider supporting me on Patreon so I can afford to pay rent and not have to move in with a rich family that wants to throw me in the Omelas hole. Imagine for me that you've just woken up on a bus. It has been a long journey, 26 hours of bus rides and late night stops in city depots to transfer from one to the next. And all of it to attend the funeral of your Aunt Pearlan Scarlet, a woman you've never met and have never heard a single kind word about from your own now dead mother. All at the behest of and on the dollar of a complete stranger, your cousin Tabitha. But it isn't mere familial obligation or social pressure that drives you to make the journey. There has always been a tugging inside you. A call that echoes from deep within, resonating with the force inside you that sees the hidden truths. You are always destined to return there, to the place you've never been. And thus, your fated journey has almost concluded. You've nearly arrived in the town of Scarlet Hollow. And then a man who's never taken a hint in his life tells you that he's going to go see his on and off girlfriend give birth to their son, reminisce about how he once wanted to kill her, and might skip out on his own child's first moments in this world, hands you a bag of boiled peanuts and hops off at the next stop, leaving you alone in the bus with a dripping bag of legumes and wondering what the hell just happened as the bus finally arrives at your destination. Don't worry, things from here will get both much better and so much worse. Scarlet Hollow is an early access visual novel being created by Black Tabby Games, the team behind Slay the Princess, and it is an astoundingly dense and phenomenally written experience that I think more people really should be playing. And that is the goal of this video. I would like to convince you to buy and play this game, pretty please. Help support some of the best and most passionate creators that I've ever seen. The game was developed with the intent that choices really should matter, and believe me when I tell you that they do. The game has been in early access since 2021, and that's entirely because BTG are fucking built different and have been writing the game to react appropriately to as many player decisions as humanly possible. That choices matter Steam tag isn't fucking around. The game also grants players 2 traits of your choice at the beginning of the game that open up new avenues and provide details that you wouldn't otherwise have, and some are even locked behind specific combinations of traits. It is a truly and marvelously dense narrative that you won't even be able to see 1/5 of in a single playthrough. But it's also a horror game, and as such, you will not be able to do everything either. As the game tells you, you will not be able to save everyone, and you may not even be able to save yourself. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't try, and it also doesn't mean that your choices won't matter in the end. This video will be broken up into 2 basic sections. The first will be an abridged telling of my own playthrough of the game, detailing the choices I made and the experience I had, which will definitely contain spoilers, but only for the path I took. Your own path may look incredibly different. The second section will be an analysis of some of the characters and themes, which will also have some spoilers of its own. If at any point you feel like you might want to play this game, I would strongly encourage you to go play it and come back after, because my summary will not do the writing quality justice, and the video will still be here when you return. My spoilers will not ruin the experience for you, but I know some people care about them more than others, so this is your fair warning. Also, if you're interested in the story but don't feel like playing it, I've streamed every released chapter on my channel and you can watch it there if you're willing to put up with my terrible voice work. At time of writing, 5 of 7 chapters have been released, so that is what I'll be covering in this essay. It's a dense game with a lot to go over, so grab some popcorn, settle in, and prepare to hear why you should play Scarlet Hollow. Welcome home, dear viewer.
Won't you stay with me, my darling, when this house don't feel like home, when this house don't feel like home.
So you start the game by picking your name, gender, the name of your hometown, and your traits. The most important thing here is the traits, from which you can pick only 2 of 7, and these will open up different paths and dialogue options. For instance, I picked Talk with Animals and Mystical, the latter of which being really handy for getting a fuller picture of exactly what's happening when supernatural shit goes down, and the former just being the most fun thing ever and the best part of the game. After picking your trait, you're dropped into the uncomfortable conversation with the nameless stranger, and just to give you some perspective on how far-reaching the choices in this game are, you're able to offer the peanuts to nearly every character you meet in-game, to the point that your friends just accept that it's a part of who you are, or if you tell him that you're allergic to nuts, then it will also be remarked upon later, multiple times. Anyway, after taking hold of the soggy nut bag, you finally step off the bus to meet your cousin Tabitha, a supremely prickly woman with an icy scowl that could stop a runaway train with no time for pleasantries, who ushers you into her car and drives you up to the estate. During the drive, you have the option to converse with her, though she pretty much stonewalls any attempt you make at connecting with her. And wait, welcome to the Dead Moms Club. Who the fuck would say that to anyone? And what happens if I do? Oh, she did not like that, oh dear. I'm sure she's just jealous my mom died first. It's also here that we get our first glimpse into the deeply troubling relationship your mother had with the rest of the family, as well as the black hole dense emotional repression that Tabitha is maintaining, both of which I'll come back to later. You arrive at the dilapidated Scarlet Manor, and Tabitha gives you a quick warning about watching out for holes before taking you on a reluctant tour of the kitchen, where she tells you not to touch her ice cream or mac and cheese, and you get to talk to Frou Frou, the bitchy French cat, then the worst bathroom I've ever seen that wasn't located in a bar, and then your new bedroom before heading back to the foyer to grab your stuff. Oh yeah, she's only providing PB&J supplies for you to eat while you stay here, and this is her response if you say that PB&J is your favourite. Isn't she lovely? She's trying her best, okay? At the foyer, you can ask Tabitha if you've done something wrong, since she's seemingly been pissed at you from the moment you met, to which she actually relents and says she's just under pressure, asking you to stay out of her hair while she's at work. You reply that we should hang out later, she says we'll see, and then she fucks off. Once she's gone, you scrape together the most aesthetically pleasing PB&J I've ever seen, harass the cat, and then head back up to your room to meet the single best character in the game, Dustin the Possum. Do you see this boy? He is my best friend. He is my baby. I made him a nest out of my clothes so he would be warm and comfy. And he is the greatest argument for why you should take the talk with animals trait. And if you are mean to him, then we are not friends, viewer. Dustin will remember your kindness. And you will be kind to him. Isn't that right? From here you can choose to hang out at the mansion and just stay put, or go out and explore the town and see the rest of the game. I'll give you 3 guesses as to which choice I made, and the first 2 don't count. Entering town, you're greeted by a lovely stranger and her adorable dog. Everyone meets Stella and Gretchen, who sounds like a Southern Belle. Gretchen does, I mean, canonically she sounds like a Southern Belle. I'm not sure what Stella sounds like, but I like to imagine a pleasant Appalachian accent on her. Since we're meeting for the first time and I want to make friends, I offer her the peanuts. She turns them down and says she thinks I should have them in case I get hungry, which is so considerate of her. A brief chat with Stella reveals that she knew Tabitha back when they were kids and that they used to be good friends, though they've since grown distant. Gretchen and I also have a short talk about how horrid Frou Frou is, which kind of weirds Stella out and she assumes I'm joking when I say I can talk to animals. No one ever takes me seriously. I wonder why. It's probably a conspiracy or something, who knows. Anyway, Stella invites us to the local diner to treat us to coffee and a biscuit as a welcoming treat. And who am I to say no to such a kind offer? Everyone gets a little weird when we walk in, small town and all that, but I introduce myself to the group and grab a booth with Stella, successfully blending in with the locals. We're approached by Avery, the 3rd best character in the game and local non-binary barista. I politely offer them a peanut, which they turn down with equal courtesy before taking our orders and also bringing some bacon for our little potato friend, who gobbles it up with admirable gusto. This is also when they tell us how to hide the text box, because they know you want to look at the dog. They know. And you do. Stella fills us in on local events while Avery brings us our biscuit, and our mystical senses inform us that it is literally a perfect biscuit. Divinity given doughy form. Also, Avery informs us that Stella is a YouTuber and a bit of a celebrity for making cryptid hunting videos, after which she invites us to help with her current project, finding the skunk ape, which is apparently just shitty or Bigfoot, but I would agree to go on a hike with a friend even if I'd been shot in the foot, so obviously I said yes and we hit the dusty trail together. We talk philosophy and cryptids for a bit before coming across Duke, who Stella informs us is perfectly harmless despite the fact that he approaches with a hunting rifle, and informs us he's been looking for whatever's killing his chickens. He thinks it's a mountain lion, but it definitely isn't. You can feel something dark in the woods, your senses catching wind of an oncoming horrible tragedy. Someone will die tonight. Someone in this group. Anyway, as our warnings of impending doom get us thoroughly Cassandra'd, we go our separate ways from the man to start filming, only to be interrupted by a horrible cry and encounter what used to be a deer.
Can you hear the sweet whispers of new growth?
Okay, I don't like this thing.
The acorn becomes the oak, becomes the rich rot that swallows the acorn. The cycle that is stretched is not the cycle that is broken.
And I don't think Gretchen likes this deer either.
Your souring husk will feed the coming world. This is good.
And then it's gone. Well, that was horrifying, so, thanks, Speak with Animals. Perhaps in an attempt to emotionally distance ourselves from whatever the fuck all that was about, you take a snack break with Stella and talk about your home lives, which allows you to establish a bit about your character and get to know Stella a little bit better. What's interesting is that while you're allowed to basically be whoever you want, there are some hard and fast things established about insert name here as a person. Their mother died after a long battle with illness and they were left with the hospital bills. They're estranged from the rest of the family for reasons they were never told, and they have a trademark Scarlet family look to them. Sunken eyes, rigid cheekbones, and a sad or haunted look. I think it's a good touch. It really solidifies them as a part of the world and not just a vessel for the player. Anyway, after you bond with a cute girl, you hear a noise that your sixth sense says is bad, and you run off to find what used to be a chicken.
I see it, it's sweet and kind, a bed of flowers, a nice wind, a gentle gardener.
And then it's snatched away, and you run after it on Stella's prompting, which leads her to tripping over the chicken. Good job, Stella.
A new beginning, I'm going home.
And this is, unfortunately, where the tragedy we foresaw begins. Stella continued to narrate for her camera as Duke arrives and is absolutely horrified to see the state his chicken, Bertie, is in, and all the while she continues to rant to you about the coming change. If you have the mystical and animals trait, you note that all of the animals seem to be going through a religious experience, which freaks Stella out. She shows Duke the footage of Bertie being grabbed and you decide to examine the chicken closer.
Can't hide from me, I can see you. I can smell you, sick creature.
Bertie's eyes are glazed over and sightless, but they still roll around in their sockets, and her wing is barely connected anymore. But that's really the least of her worries right now.
The old becomes the new. I've never flown, but now I soar.
What first appeared to be a tumor is revealed to be much worse. A vile sac, pulsating with festering fetal growth. Something is being born. A swelling parasitoid grown from the degradation of mind and body.
Can you hear the birth that dwells within me? Can you hear the way it roars and thunders?
Stella and Duke discuss how to handle the pustule. Perhaps popping it could save the poor bird, but this does not please the creatures that inflicted this upon her, and they make their presence known. This is also when the whispers start. If you have the mythical or talk with animals trait, you can actually understand what they're saying. Otherwise, it's just unintelligible, ominous muttering, which is such a great touch. Incorporating the traits into the game's actual audio is really going a step beyond.
The gardeners come to mend and nurture. Let me blossom and sprout. Let me become.
The creature steps forward, a pale and twisted imitation of life, eyes set upon their implanted host. But another snatches at Gretchen, even as the first rushes for Duke and prepares to inject Gretchen with its horrid stinger. This is the first major choice of the game. Who will you save? Well, I mean, the answer is obvious. Gretchen needs the help. She is a 15-year-old pug, and Duke has a gun, so he'll be fine. Okay, Duke might not be fine. Understandably, Stella does not take this well. Unsure of what else to do, you both book it back to the main road where you call the police, who arrive and are as fundamentally unhelpful as you might imagine. They immediately suspect you. Stella has your back. They offer you a ride home that Stella initially tries to refuse because of amaxophobia and then claim her camera as evidence. Stella does know someone who might be able to help, though, and she brings you back into town to hopefully meet this person.
Right.
Oh boy, another one. A shadowy figure looms across the road, and
Welcome home.
you know you're finally where you're meant to be, which isn't ominous at all. This is Wayne, by the way, who I'm certain the internet will be perfectly normal about. Thankfully, Sybil answers her door and tells Wayne the Loomer to go home, which he apparently does. This is not the last time you'll see him. It is also not the last time you'll notice something greater behind Sybil's welcoming persona. She invites us inside and Stella recounts the story, as well as the fact that she took the SD card from the camera while the cops weren't looking, which is so fucking cool of her. Her phone screen isn't big enough to clearly show Sybil what happened, so you borrow her daughter Kanika's laptop for a better viewing experience, after which Sybil reveals that the creatures were called ditchlings, largely harmless harbingers of doom. Her words, not mine. It's getting late though, and Tabitha blew up your phone with worry earlier, so you promised to meet tomorrow and bid your friends goodnight. Back home, we meet Tabitha in the foyer, and she is so pissed we made her worry. And then she says we can talk about it tomorrow, and she sends you to your room like you're a teenager getting grounded. And that just leaves you to try to fall asleep after watching a man die tonight. Pleasant dreams, I guess.
All my aching bones are trembling, and I may yet fall apart.
So you wake up the next day with the memories of last night still fresh in your mind, which is entirely understandable. I mean, we just watched a man die to a bunch of Pillsbury dough omens. Domans, I guess. That's bound to leave a bit of mental scarring. Unfortunately, the world does not stop when one man dies, and neither does your metabolism. First food, then contemplation on the horrors. Just kidding, first we check in on Dustin, who's still there and now has some bread. He says he had a very good night. He found some bread and ate a bug, and you can confide in him as you see fit. Dustin is actually a wonderfully integral part of your daily routine when you have the speak with animals trait. Each chapter of the game begins with a comfortable mundanity before slowly ramping up to the horror that the genre promises. And part of said comfort is the maintenance of routine. Every day you wake up, converse with your best friend, check to see if the creepy doll has moved, make breakfast, talk with Tabitha, and take a shower before you leave. And all of this serves as both a key ingredient to making you feel like a part of the world and an important use of juxtaposition. Good horror relies on the separation between the normal and the abnormal. Nothing can be 100% scary all the time, and it's only by giving you a sense of normalcy at all that the game is able to tear it away later to really start fucking with you. It's one of the things that makes the game so good. Anyway, you head downstairs and Tabitha confronts you about the police calling. Apparently she'd thought what you said last night was a joke that Stella put you up to, and asks you not to put any more on her plate since the week is already very stressful. Notably, she gets very uncomfortable when you ask what's up between the two of them, only telling you that they have a history and saying she doesn't need to explain herself before heading off to work. Oh, they were gay as shit. After she leaves, you can investigate the garden since you thought you saw movement, and you actually find some pretty big boot prints along with some suspicious pus, which, ew? Well, this looks like important evidence, so we snap a quick picture, finish our morning routine, and then head into town. Once you get there, you run into Sybil and Avery, who you can tell about Duke, and they offer their condolences that you experienced it before heading to work and inviting you to hang out for a bit. And then Sybil will be a mysterious old lady about things. Oh, I'm on to you, mysterious old lady. I don't know precisely what I'm onto just yet, but I am so fucking onto it. If you do go talk to Avery, you can tell them about the ditchling situation and get to know them a little better. Most notably, Avery isn't from the Holler. They moved here 3 years ago after their Aunt Winnie offered them a job and a place to stay when they were having issues with the parents, and they still don't really feel like they fit in. Avery is actually a very interesting character, and I'll have more to say on them in the characters and themes section. But for now, we bid them farewell and head to meet Kanika and Stella at the library for research and scones. Kanika here is a fun contrast to Stella in that she's a pure skeptic about anything and everything supernatural. She doubts you can talk to animals, doubts the ditchlings are cryptids, and doesn't believe in basically anything magical until she's forced to accept it later on. She is also absolutely lovely and fucking gorgeous, and I love her very much. You also meet Oscar, the town's librarian and single father to a girl named Rosa, and by talking to his cat Pixel you can find out that they're both living in the library because their house, which is connected to the building, is haunted. We promise to help him with that later, and after research that points us to the mines as a potential area of interest, we head off to see if we can talk to the girl's friend Reese first and hopefully bring him with us. Reese has been living with a debilitating chronic illness that's left him barely able to live his life at all, and which takes most of the time and attention of his mother, Dr. Joan Kelly. Dr. Kelly is a rather severe woman who takes her son's condition very seriously and shoos us away because he's sleeping, but agrees to let us come back tomorrow to see him for an early dinner, if he's feeling up to it. And so, with nothing left to do here, we head off to investigate the mines. Rather interestingly, Stella again prefers to walk, and you have the choice of walking with her or riding in Kanika's van. I chose the walk, and after a short bonding conversation, we arrive at the Scarlet Mine, where Kanika has the honestly quite clever idea to send us in with earbuds so they can listen in and give us advice, since both the girls are too well known to go unnoticed, and Stella actually has a lifetime ban from the premises for all the times she tried to sneak in. What a legend. There are 3 groups of miners, and you can decide how many you want to talk to before heading to Tabitha's office, and you can even offer each group a peanut. Speaking of the peanuts, you can mention the bus stranger to each group to see if anyone knows him, and the girls are horrified to learn that he's where you got them, especially since that means they're several days old now. It's fucking hilarious. I am never getting rid of these things. However, on the way to Tabby's office, you're struck by an intense feeling of foreboding as you sense Wayne approaching, now with an ominous veil over his head and some very choice words for you. What are you?
Flesh and blood, much like yourself. You don't have to be afraid of me. I am the only person in this town who truly cares about your safety. Don't forget that. Even if it's already too late to stop what's going to happen.
Ominous and stalkery. I don't like that at all. By the way, if you tell him to stop following you, he just says,
No.
and then pisses off. Creepy as he is, I respect his dedication to the bit. You try to ask what's going to happen, but he's already gone. And this is when the girls call you through the earbuds and you find out that Wayne's presence staticked out the conversation, though Stella could still see you talking to him. They agree that he's real fucking creepy, and we head up to Tabitha's office after hiding the earbuds so she doesn't think that you're spying on her. Tabby isn't too happy to see you in her office, but she doesn't kick you out and will listen if you want to talk, which gives us the ability to learn some interesting tidbits. If you ask her about Wayne and say he's following you, she'll tell you that he was friendly with her and even visited her at the estate a couple of times before disappearing for unknown reasons. You can also show her the picture of the boot prints and she'll tell you the estate is well guarded, while also promising that she won't let anything happen to you this week, a promise she does actually keep multiple times. You have no idea how much I want to talk about Tabitha right now, but I'll save it for later, because the moment you decide to regroup with your friends, you spot a girl sneaking up to the abandoned section of the mines, and after Stella and Kanika realize that's Oscar's daughter, the three of you decide you need to go in after her, especially once you reveal that you can feel something even worse than the night before stirring in the mine. For context, the Shaw mine was the site of a collapse that killed over 100 miners due to negligence on the behalf of Charles Shaw, who was the business partner of Enoch Scarlet, the first Scarlet of real historical note. So neither Stella nor Kanika are surprised that the place would have the worst vibes possible. It's also worth noting that, while Stella is fucking chomping at the bit to go in the mine because she's the queen of rushing in, Kanika is absolutely terrified of having to go in there, and is only doing so because she's worried about Rosalina. You'll actually find that Kanika's sense of responsibility controls her a lot more than she'd like. Also, I decided to call Tabitha to let her know what's going on. She takes it about as well as you'd expect, and while she'd rather you wait for her, the call was purely a courtesy and you hang up and run in to follow your friends. The coolest and worst thing about the mine at first is that there's this deep resounding knocking noise echoing up through the shaft at regular intervals, which your mystic senses identify as a warning that whatever hateful presence is in there, it does not want you here. But there's nothing you can really do about it right now except hope that you're fast enough. So you press on to find the teens. And you do! Rosalina is there with 4 older teenagers, most of whom are rather unpleasant to talk to and even to each other. Aside from Rosalina, who's trying to avoid being at home, the group consists of Becca, the apparent leader and also a massive bitch who's an incredibly toxic friend, Alexis, a fairly pleasant kid who's made worse by her friendship with Becca, Miles, who Kanika is very not happy with, and Zane, who's just happy to be here. You try to convince them to leave because shit's about to get fucky and obviously they aren't having any of it, and because the teenagers they all mock you mercilessly for being old and cringe. Curse of Cassandra, it's always like this. Luckily, Tabby shows up with her absolutely lovely smile to make the situation both better and worse. She's pissed at everyone here, not the least of which being you, but she's especially mad at Stella, who, again, has been banned from the mines for life. It also leads to this absolutely hilarious interaction that I absolutely love. It is entirely within my rights to tell them to leave, much like it's entirely within my rights to tell you to leave. Was your lifetime ban from my minds not a clear enough message for you? Hell yeah, Tabitha, tear that sad 20-something this track. Hey, I'm defending you, and I'm not sad. Where'd you get that idea? Running a clickbaity YouTube channel where you run around the woods chasing nothing is extremely sad. Okay, different kind of sad, but okay. So she's sad. So what? Give it a few years and you'll be sad too. The passage of time is inescapable. Becca also claims that they were just trying to show Rosa a good time because her home life sucks due to the haunting that they think Oscar made up, which Tabitha isn't having, and then another horrible knock echoes through the mine, which distracts the adults long enough for Becca, Alexis, and Rosalina to sneak off deeper into the shaft, which, and doesn't this sound lovely, means you have to go in after them. Kanika frog marches Zane and her brother back outside while you join Stella and Tabitha to follow the kids via a different path, which leads to us overhearing the girls gossiping about Stella and Tabby, but mostly Stella. Oh come on, she doesn't even have a sponsor. What kind of YouTuber doesn't have a... One who's trying their best, okay? God, I hope you get stuck down here.
I didn't mean it! What the fuck?
Stella is actually in talks with a company named Meat Rice for a sponsorship though, so good for her. There, but for the grace of God go I, Stella. As you follow, the knocking only grows louder and more repetitive, and you feel a pull inside you as something within the mines calls out, desperate to be seen. This sensation drives you to the deepest pit of the abandoned Shaw mine until you finally find this. You awaken from your vision to Stella desperately calling your name. Apparently the moment you laid eyes on the carving, both you and Tabitha began seizing and passed out, the dark truth flooding your mind too much for you to handle. It's also worth noting that if you don't have the mystical trait, you'll actually see less of a vision, and that lesser form is implied to be what Tabitha herself witnessed as she lacks your particular gift. She tries to rationalize it when she comes to, but is interrupted by Rosa. The poor girl is absolutely distraught because she couldn't convince the others to leave the mine, and now that it's beginning to collapse, you have a decision to make. Do you take Rosalina and leave, ensuring that some of you will escape unscathed, or do you go after Alexis and Becca and risk getting caught in the collapse? I chose to take Rosalina, and we barely made it out of the mine before it collapsed behind us, sealing the girls inside. No, I'm not happy with the choice I made, but I still had to make it. Oscar shows up for his daughter and they have a very traumatized heart-to-heart, while the police decide to harass me for some reason. I think they're transphobic. Though Tabitha warns them away from trying anything, and after that you bid your friends a fond morrow and retire to Tabitha's car. Once again, she's not in a talkative mood, but her attitude is far more understandable this time. You can actually take the time to bond just a little, and if you say you'd like to get to know her better, she admits that she'd actually like that. Not now, of course, she doesn't have the energy, but sometime soon she'll be ready to open up. And once we get home, she thanks you for calling her earlier. She's not happy that you didn't wait for her, but she does appreciate what you did regardless and tells you as much before heading to bed. You also retire to your bedroom, but as you lie there you get a message from the group chat. Stella and Kanika are sending pictures of the ditchlings. There's more of them now, and they're getting bolder. The mine collapse wasn't the doom their presence foretold, or at least it wasn't all of it. And as you drift off to sleep, all you can think of is Alexis and Becca, trapped and alone in the mine, if they're even alive at all. 2 days in Scarlet Hollow, and the situation has only gotten worse. All you can do for now is rest and hope things get better tomorrow.
Oh, ashes, ashes, dust to dust. The devil's after both of us. Oh, lay my curses all to rest. Make a mercy out of me.
You're woken the next day by harsh sunlight and dull aches, along with the unpleasant residual sootiness left behind by the air of the mines. A further reminder of the tragedy that occurred the night before. And while you can't do anything about the girls trapped under fuck knows how many tons of stone, you can at least clean yourself off before you start the day. And you probably will want to do so, because aside from the fun of role-playing someone with personal hygiene, the other characters will start to comment on your smell if you skip too many showers. Also, since you're given the option to think about someone special in the shower, I feel like this is as good a time as any to talk about the game's romance options. Though I will be keeping it brief because I personally just don't have any interest in it. It's not that the characters aren't likable or attractive, it's just that romance isn't really what I picked up the game for. So yes, you can romance one of several characters if you so desire, with your normal choices being between Stella, Kanika, Avery, Reese, and Oscar. You can only romance one per playthrough, and you can even break up with them if you so choose. And each character also has a certain trait that they find more desirable that you don't strictly need to romance them, but having it does make it easier. Or you can just take the hot trait and have your pick of the lot. The game actually has a very complex system of variables that determines your relationship with every major character, not just the dateable ones. Taking the flirt dialogue options are how you start your romance attempts, and you'll know you've succeeded when you're given the option marked romance. Aside from these 5, there are also 3 secret romanceables in Wayne, Dr. Kelly, and Sybil. They take far more specific actions than the others, and other than Wayne, who I'll talk about later, you won't get the flirt option in a normal conversation. I encourage you to discover what what happens with each character on your own time, because this video is already far too long to further discuss something I have no interest in. The complexities of how the game tracks your relationships with each character is actually really interesting though, and I'd like to recommend Wormgirl's video on the game because she goes into more detail on that front, so I'll link to it down below. So anyway, once you're done scrubbing away the gunk and the guilt, we check in on Dustin and find that another possum has joined him. This is Dustin Mom, who'll be living with her son because an asshole squatter kicked her out of the glass house. Yes, those are the actual words she uses. She also thanks you for taking care of her son, which is so fucking sweet. Like, yes ma'am, I do love your boy. He is my favorite bean, and you have my full permission to kill and eat Frou-Frou if she fucks with Dustin at all. Godspeed. You can also text Kanika and Stella, and I chose to send some lovingly rendered memes to both in the group chat and to them each individually. It'll be a bit before they reply though, so we head downstairs to the kitchen and find Tabitha eating ice cream for breakfast like the depressed queen she is, and a red-headed woman doing the dishes. This lovely loquacious lady is Janie, the wife of Pastor Daniel, who I forgot to mention but everyone hates, and also Tabitha's house cleaner and former babysitter. I like her, she's very nice. We offer her a peanut, which she turns down with an anecdote that Tabitha cuts off because she's running an errand and bringing us along because, well, let's be honest, she can't trust us to not get into trouble, which is a fair assessment. If you say yay cousin bonding time, she's just like, whatever gets you to come along before you're dragging you out the front door and down to the general store so she can get some tea from Sybil. While you chat about tea and errands, Kanika bursts through the door and yells at her mother for coddling Miles and letting him get away with going to the mines with zero punishment. Another thing I'll bring up later. Tabby says people should keep the drama off the streets, and then she and Sybil head to the back room and leave you alone with a vicious Miles, who I'm definitely not worried will make fun of me while they're gone. Please don't leave me alone with him. Luckily, we're not alone for long, as this big brick shithouse of a man walks in and starts a conversation. This is Beau, Duke's son. Sorry for your loss, Beau. He talks to us about looking for his father and having to step up to be the man of the house now, and I honestly feel really bad for him. Beau is actually a very gentle soul, and I quite like him. Also, the others finally text back and ask if we want to chill, but I was promised cousin hangout time, so no dice there, sorry guys. Tabitha is understandably surprised to find you still waiting in the store and says that since she has a couple of hours to spare, she'll grab some sodas and you can hang out together. And she takes you to a small house off Main Street that the Scarlets own. They apparently own the housing of most of their workers, which isn't a bad thing at all. I'm not going to go into all the details of the hangout here since a lot of it is very relevant to her character analysis and I don't want to endlessly repeat myself, but there are a few interesting things to talk about here. First of all, this house is Tabitha's secret getaway. She's never told anyone about it before us, and to do so is a remarkable display of vulnerability and trust. As you talk to her, you also learn that she's never left the Holler. Her entire life has revolved around the mine and the responsibility tied to the Scarlet name. She'd love to go elsewhere, but she's never had the time, and telling her you'd like to go to the beach with her makes her cautiously optimistic. And if you ask her if she's happy, she'll eventually admit that generally she isn't, but she is happy that you're here. And it's one of the few times you get to see a genuine smile from her. Again, I'm going to come back to this later, but Tabitha is a fundamentally lonely character. She'll also tell you about her mother if you ask, and it's made very clear through the conversation that the woman was an actual monster. She was abusively controlling and manipulative and was the reason that Tabitha stopped being friends with Stella in the first place. She also doesn't know her father, as he left when she was little and never wrote or called. She says she doesn't think about him anymore, but it's pretty obvious it still stings. On the subject of Stella though, it's here you find out the two used to not quite date, and neither really seems to have the word for it, but even before it got to that point, she had to hide their friendship from Perlan, and the woman made sure to completely isolate Tabby once she graduated. And when they didn't have the excuse of school or homework to see each other, they just stopped. What absolutely hurts the most here is that when you mention that she can reconnect now that Perlan isn't there to stop her and that Stella misses her, she admits that it hadn't even occurred to her that there wasn't anything getting in the way anymore. And while she feels like she can't, especially because she hasn't been very nice to Stella lately, she'd still like to try. At the end of the hangout session, you can even invite her to go ghost hunting with you, and she actually agrees, joking that she'll probably need to save you again. After that, your friends text you about something called Mayor Jimmy Day, and while Tabitha thinks it's stupid, she's still willing to go with you to that too. At least until Becca's mom shows up to scream at her for not personally being there to watch her men dig out the collapsed mine, which causes her to go to work and leave you to meet the mayor without her.
No, we were making so much progress, you
bitch! She will still be there tonight though, so you head off to politically schmooze with your friends. Mayor Jimmy is a dog, by the way. The Scarlets are the only real power in the holler, so the people elect a dog. It's also one of the only 2 places in the game you can actually get rid of your peanuts, which is hilarious. And Gretchen fucking hates him. She gets into such a fight with him over politics that Stella has to leave, making you promise to fill her in on their feud later because she actually believes in your ability to talk to animals now. Fucking finally. Gretchen is right to hate him, by the way. He's a corrupt politician through and through. On your way out, you run into Pastor Daniel. And remember how everyone fucking hates him? Well, it's because he's like this. And he also might actually be cursed, since your mystic sense says that something is actually compelling you to dislike him. And he can also talk to animals just like you, and when he finds out, he gets nervous and requests you meet him at his church so he can talk about it later. Ah, a fellow aficionado of animal politics. I'm sure we'll have much to discuss. What's actually extremely funny is that if you bring up the fact that he might be cursed to your friends, they both dismiss it on the grounds that he just gives off bad vibes and they're allowed to dislike him even if he didn't do anything wrong, which I think just lends credence to the curse theory. If Stella, of all people, is dismissing the idea of something supernatural out of hand, then you know shit's fucky. Anyway, from here we head over to meet Reese, who is just... Jesus, how are you still alive? The dude looks like he shat out his organs at the age of 7 and just kept on going. Anyway, we head inside, and after his mom does mom things, like shaming him for having a messy room, we finally get to talk to him and find out the dude has been living with the worst combination of chronic illnesses since puberty, and it's left him a very morbid person. You can comment on his fucked up art and talk to him about both his condition and that of the town until the doc calls you for dinner and tells you to wash your hands, you filthy simpleton. And on the way to the bathroom, you suddenly feel yourself pulled towards a strange door. No, not the door. What's beyond it? There's another carving here, and it calls to you, just like the other did. It wants you to find it, to witness the truth it hides. And unless you have the mystic trait, you cannot resist the pull. Though, if you do give in, Dr. Kelly just snaps you out of it and tells you to stay the fuck out of her office. And I am not arguing, that woman scares the shit out of me. Dinner isn't great. Aside from the food being something you can only say you enjoy if you're lying, and Reese having to take his medicine, there's a distinct awkwardness that settles over the table like a weighted blanket filled with tapioca pudding. Though there are a few genuinely sweet moments where they reminisce over when they were kids, and the doctor seems genuinely fond of remembering them. At least until Reese gets upset over his mother's controlling nature and suddenly curls up in pain, after which his mom puts him to bed and kicks us out. You bring up the presence of the carving to your friends and resolve to return later. For now, it's time to bust some ghosts. We get to the library and are joined by Oscar, Avery, and fucking Zane of all people, who at least Stella seems happy to see. Why are you here? I was confronted with my own mortality for the first time yesterday, so I'm desperate for answers about the afterlife to ease my troubled mind. Alright, yeah, that's fair. Welcome to the crew. Tabby isn't here yet, but that's no reason not to start. And Rosalina joins in too because, you know, she lives here. And the ghost appeared in her room, so we argue she has every right to be. Plus, we can't exactly stop her, so she might as well hunt ghosts supervised. Stella actually has a surprising amount of ghost hunting equipment, which she goes about setting up while Tabitha arrives, and I have to defend my choice to invite her to Kanika. These two can't stand each other, and it's fucking great. Anytime they're in the same room, it's just...
I hate you! I hate you a slightly larger amount!
Anyway, we debate ghosts for a little bit, and then head to Rosalina's room, where the ghost itself hasn't manifested yet, but has left a bloodstain that returns no matter how many times Oscar cleans it up. Spooky. People debate the potential normal causes for the stain before Stella just tears up the fucking carpet to reveal an ominous trapdoor that nobody but her is happy to see. Then she opens it. We come to in Oscar's living room again, or at least in what appears to be his living room. The colour has been bled from the world, and the stale air makes you feel claustrophobic and wrong, as if you're trapped in a coffin and running out of oxygen. And notably, everyone else has disappeared. Everyone else but Tabitha, the only other Scarlet in the building. Probably coincidence. She's not ready to admit that there's anything supernatural happening just yet and tries to open the front door, only to find it leads back to the annex to Oscar's house somehow. And then we step through that door into the true madness of the haunting. This is actually one of my favourite parts of the game. The world loses its sense of cohesion as the room, and each that follows, takes the form of pulsating stages for a play put on by the ghost recounting the story of what happened to it, and all of them rife with symbolism. Each of our companions comprises a role within this narrative, grotesquely puppeted by the phantom and speaking in a voice not their own. They all have a role to play, the lover, the father, the mother, the entity, etc. And if you have the mystical trait, you can not only know what each role is, but know the exact line to say in return as you channel the memory of the presence haunting the place itself. The story is of one Charles Shaw Jr., the son of the former partner of Enoch Scarlet, who was framed for the mine collapse and run out of town on a rail, and it tells of his ill-fated love with Edwardine Scarlet, who was Tabitha and the player's grandmother. Junior and Eddie were childhood friends turned sweethearts who were separated when his family was run out of town, and Junior eventually returned to try to reconnect with her. We don't know everything that happened, but what we do know is that his father asked him to clear the family name while on his deathbed. He met a character known only as the Witch who gave him information that could help him break the curse in the town, and at one point when climbing the trellis to see her, a being imprisoned on the estate known only as the Entity revealed that she was pregnant with his child. Tabitha starts it very defensive and skeptical as he works through the play, but she soon grows very invested in what happens. Wayne also makes an appearance, breaking through the illusion of the ghost to make good on his claims about caring for you, by threatening to hurt Stella for dragging you into this. I'll have a lot more to say on him later, but I'll be honest, I do not like Wayne. Anyway, the play ends with... Oh good. Hey guys. Just hanging around? This lovely little moment, and then you're back in front of the trapdoor, which opens on its own, and then you're thrown in to find another carving, and another vision. Charles found the carving, and when Edwardine shows up, he claims they can undo whatever it is that Enoch did. But she shoved him into the hole and caved his skull in, leaving his body undiscovered. The vision ends and you find yourself on trial, finally able to talk to the presence itself. Well, kind of, it still talks through your friends, but it does at least tell you what it wants. Time. In a cruel take on the sins of the father, the ghost wants to take some of your remaining lifespan as recompense for his untimely end. He doesn't care which between the two of you pays, but someone has to give up an unknown portion of their life for him to be satisfied enough to move on. He can't actually force you to, but if you don't, he will remain and someone in the future will be hurt. This is when Sybil makes a timely arrival, startling the ghost enough to break its hold over your friends and allowing them to leave. But she also insists that someone should pay, and she believes it should be Tabitha, since she's the eldest and has actually lived in the town. It isn't fair, but it's important that something be done. What's interesting is that if you step forward to volunteer, Tabitha will do everything she can to persuade you otherwise, and you're fully able to agree and just leave. But if you insist on doing it, she forces you out of the way and takes your place, giving up years of her life so you don't have to. This is another thing I'll have to come back to later, but it's worth noting she'll only do this if she's there and has a good enough relationship with you. Tabitha won't sacrifice herself for someone she doesn't care about, but at this point in this playthrough, she very much does. When the light fades, Tabby climbs out of the dirt, now a full decade older and visibly worn. You can peer inside the hole to find the mummified remains of Charles Shaw Jr. lying on top of the carving. Sybil promises to give him a proper burial, and you leave with your cousin. The cost was great, but the house is now ghost-free. Nobody is doing well, and talking to them reveals that they were fully conscious the entire time they were being puppeted, and it left them both fairly sore and mentally scarred. Stella is especially bad and hurries off when you try to talk to her, but the rest of the group slowly trickles their way to their respective homes. Avery asks Sybil if she's a witch, which she fucking obviously is, but she denies it and asks you to come by for a tea reading tomorrow, along with telling everyone to get some rest. After bonding with Avery for a minute, we part ways and head back to Tabitha for the drive home. If you thank her for helping and ask her why she took your place, she'll insist that it was only right, your family, and it wouldn't have been fair to you. It's also worth noting that when you get home and you tell her that you want to keep in touch, or that you might want to stick around after the funeral and stay with her, as tired as she is, she perks up just a little at the idea of it. With nothing left to do, you head to bed. You've survived one more day. You put an angry ghost to rest. You just have to make it 4 more days to the funeral. Though what comes next is anyone's guess.
This house has been named like an elegy. Oh my, oh my, echoing where my ghosts all used to be. Oh my, oh my.
You awaken Thursday morning in a state of peaceful denial. The events of last night feel so far away, though the memory of them causes a shudder to run down your back. And while you could lie there and think about that all day, you're fortunately interrupted by the buzz of your phone. It's Kanika, who says she still can't believe Tabitha took that bullet for you, and also that she can't get a hold of Stella and that she's worried. You call and text Stella and get nothing back. The message isn't even delivered. Okay, yes, that is very concerning. You agree to help Kanika search for your mutual friend and set about your morning routine, showering, checking the closet to see that the creepy doll has indeed moved, but that's a problem for later, or hopefully never. And then you check in on Dustin and Dustin Mom, who both have bread now. There's actually a hilarious little exchange here where Dustin Mom thinks you might have changed your mind and come to eat them, and if you say you'd never do that because you love them, she says that survival always overrules friendship. Dustin defends you and says that the inside is different, with enough bread to go around and no need to eat your friends, and Mom hopes he can keep his innocence forever. Dustin also asks if you'll fight the asshole squatter to win Mom back her house, and I would do anything for him. So I say yes, and then goodbye, as we head down to see Tabitha, who looks even worse in the harsh light of day. Though it's not just the age wearing on her, it turns out the miners are striking, which is great for them, but also fucking horrible timing. There's actually a really interesting exchange here about people's perceptions and her attempts to do right by her workers, and then we get news that they found the girls, or at least they can hear one of them, which is both good news and progress. She then tells you to stay the fuck out of trouble, but also says to call her if danger does present itself, and then tromps off to work. I promise nothing. We scrape together a delicious breakfast, check out the glass house to find that Tabitha is keeping a goat named Goat in there, and that we can't get in without tools, so we can't evict him. I'm so sorry, Dustin, I tried my best. And then we head into town, stopping along the path when we find Avery making their way up to us. How's it going, my food? Turns out they were coming to check up on us and talk about how we're both doing. They also note that there's a fuck ton more ditchlings around, and they're even out during the day now. And they call them kinda cute. You can flirt with Avery here, which I did because they're amazing, and then we invite them to help us search for Stella, which they agree to since Winnie gave them the morning off, and then we meet Kanika in town. Kanika and Avery commiserate on their shared soreness, literally in both body and soul, and you can even ask Kanika how she feels about the supernatural being real, which she has very mixed feelings about. Kanika is a very rational person. She was actually training to be a vet before her father died and she had to come back home, so she views the revelations of last night as an expansion of her understanding of reality as a whole, but really wishes there could be more that was on our side and didn't want to hurt us. Basically, being the Sailor Moon superfan she is, she wishes magical girls were real. Avery points out that her mom is obviously a witch, again, fucking duh, and Kanika actually starts to accept it might be true. But that is a discussion for later. Right now we need to look for Stella. We start with her house and find nothing but a slightly untidy kitchen and a room that, while messy, is apparently nothing compared to the garbage pit that is Kanika's room. No Stella here. Next to the police station to file a missing persons report and find that the police are objectively useless no matter where they are or what they're doing, as Deputy Dipshit here refuses to help Bo get back his family's prized pumpkin that their neighbor stole. Bo, I know you're a farmer, but please trust my expertise when I tell you that this particular breed of pig is fucking worthless. Then we head to the library to check in with Oscar, and we also find the mayor in a meeting with a few other dogs, most notably Scraps and Daisy, his electoral rivals. We make them very happy by calling them good dogs, which you will do, viewer, if you know what's good for you. And we find that Jimmy is still corrupt and useless. Scraps has formed a dog militia, and they agree to help us search for Stella and Gretchen. Yeah, who's some good dog? Who's some good dogs? No, not you, Jimmy. Can't believe I gave you my fucking peanuts. Then we check in on Oscar, appraise him of the situation, and then make him fucking promise not to go anywhere near the stone in the basement, because it will absolutely wreck you, my dude. At first he doesn't listen, of course, but with both Kanika and Avery on our side, we finally break the curse of Cassandra and keep the man from a mental mauling. Good work, team. Now on to the diner. The diner is absolutely packed with striking miners, and when you show up, Winnie jokes about Avery coming in anyway despite asking for the morning off. And when they apologize, she tells them not to and that looking for a friend is more important. I really like Winnie, she's very sweet. You can chat with the miners about the strike, but they really don't trust you because you're the boss's cousin. Avery comes to our defense, but one of the miners tells them that their friendship with us doesn't mean much because they're friends with everyone, something I'll bring up later. And Winnie absolutely goes off on the guy for calling Avery Diner Kid, forcing the asshole to apologize to Avery like the goddamn queen she is. But that's all we can do here. I guess we have to move on to the mines now. The miners are striking, obviously, though a group are still working to dig the girls out. They let us through to talk to Tabitha because they think we're chill, and I promise to give her their grievances, and we head to her office in time to see her in talks with a fucking scab who'll burn in hell. And then he leaves and we can talk to her alone. We chat about the strike and Tabby says that she'd love to be able to give them what they want. All very reasonable demands, by the way, but it would bankrupt the mine in a matter of weeks, as things currently are. She wishes she could give them something more than promises that things will get better, but that's all she has right now. You can encourage her to meet them halfway and talk things through though, and then the conversation turns to other matters, as while she is happy to see us, we also probably shouldn't be here right now. When you tell her Stella's still missing, she briefly panics, remembering Wayne's threat, but when you say there was no sign of a struggle, she says that Stella has been known to disappear for a few days at a time before when making videos, and this might be something similar. She then promises to try to figure something out. You're also given the option to tell her that you want to hang out later and that you miss her. And when you do, her reaction always makes me tear up. Tabitha has spent so much time in abject misery and loneliness that she truly does struggle to believe anyone actually could care about or want to be around her, which is why her surprise that you do and the dejectedly hopeful smile on her face when she suggests maybe having some ice cream together later absolutely breaks my heart. Tabitha is a very complex and tragic character, and I love her a lot. The last thing she tells us is to call her if we need her, but please not to look for trouble, and then we leave. The last place we search is Pastor Daniel's farm and church, which Kanika isn't too psyched about going to, but there are no bad ideas here, just ideas that lead to talking to creepy pastors. And this man is so fucking off-putting, Jesus fucking Christ. Talking with Daniel reveals more about him, how he's mostly hidden his gifts since he was a child, how alpacas are staunchly Catholic, and how his church is infested with evil rats that try to goad him into self-harm and might be talking to his daughter. And we promise to come back later to help, but otherwise the man is of no use. I'll give you 3 guesses where one of the fucking carvings is, and the first 2 don't count. At this point we've exhausted all our options and all that's left to do is go get our tea reading from Sybil, so we bid our friends farewell and head to hang out with the old lady. As you sit and sip, Sybil tells you stories about our mum, Vivian Scarlet, what she was like growing up and how she came to Sybil for advice in a panic when she found out she was pregnant with us. She then reads our leaves and they tell of darker things, particularly the symbol of the cat, which represents a hidden enemy ready to strike and betray us. She then directs us to investigate the stones more, and remembering the pull we felt when visiting Reese, we head off to the clinic where I'm sure things will be lovely and we won't be forced to make another hard choice to decide someone's fate. Foreshadowing is a narrative device, so we arrive at the clinic and ask a friendly raccoon who's apparently from New York how to break in without being seen, and on his advice we use the small hill behind the building to jump to the 2nd floor window and let ourselves in. The familiar pull of the stone carvings driving us down to the morgue where we find Reese's dead body on the examination table. Damn, we barely got to know him, but at least now he's in a better... Ah! Zombie! Nah, he's still very much alive. Apparently he just hangs out down here because being around the dead brings him some level of comfort. Well, that's morbid as fuck. We can't really dwell on his deeply unsettling psyche though, because the pull is stronger than ever and it demands our attention. Unfortunately, it's behind this wall and you're not getting through without tools. Reese asks us what's wrong, and thanks to Mystical, we can actually refocus our mind and take in details, like the fact that Perlan is in that corpse cooler right over there, which we pull open to check like the completely reasonable and sane person we are. Yep, that's a corpse alright. Satisfied that she isn't going to spring to life and bite us or something, we explain the carving situation to Reese, who's surprisingly willing to help us out by getting his mom out of her hair for a bit. He goes upstairs and pretends to be a little sicker than he actually is while asking for juice, and she immediately agrees to go out and buy some, and the moment she leaves he gives us a quick tour of her office in search of a fire axe. What a sweet guy. That's very partner in crime of you, Reese. While in the office we find our family's death certificates and snoop through, but are forced to hide in the closet when we hear his mom returning home. And is it me or his ears looking a little pointier than before? Probably just me. Anyway, we find the axe and run down into the morgue where Reese runs interference again, telling her that he'll be in the morgue listening to his favorite industrial music, which apparently sounds like a wall being broken down. If you ask him about that, he says it's because he's sad all the time, which, yeah, that checks out. More importantly though, we have a wall to remove. We hack it open to reveal an entire hidden hallway and finally, the carving. The vision hits us again and we see Enoch talking to his brother Teddy, promising him that the witch can heal his paralyzed legs. What's interesting is that while you always get more info with the mystical trait, you get a teeny bit more if you've also had Sybil's tea, which reveals Enoch telling the doctor that the man they thought was Teddy was an imposter who could still use his legs. The plot thickens. When you come to, you're in Reese's room. Apparently he carried us back because he was worried we were having a seizure, which demonstrates surprising strength for someone as waifish as Reese's. We tell him that we should probably get going so we can find Stella, but he says it'll be hard because his mom is fucking pissed. He refused to take his medicine and locked his bedroom door to keep her out, which means we're stuck in here as well. He tells us that his medication only makes him feel worse, and now that he hasn't taken it, he feels much better. Not just physically, but mentally. He starts pacing the room, clearly in the midst of a manic episode of sorts, as he recounts memories he thought were dreams about her tranking him in the past. He doesn't trust her and says she's dangerous, but he mostly just wants to wait for her to go to sleep so you can sneak out. Not wanting to upset him further, I suggest finding a distraction, specifically a horror movie he'd mentioned wanting to share earlier, which he agrees to. But as we watch the movie, Reese is beginning to change. His cheekbones and teeth are sharper, the point in his ears more pronounced, and he has a greater well of energy. But it's not just that, he's changing on a spiritual level as well. Reese is becoming something else. or maybe what he always was has finally become unshackled. His energy is so intense that it's almost a relief when Wayne knocks on the window and tells us that we need to get away from that thing. But then he starts trying to break the window, which riles Reese up even more and doesn't fucking help. Reese proclaims his newfound ability to protect the both of us, and as the window finally shatters, so does their cohort. Reese tears his way out of his clothes as his body contorts and the paintings around his room bubble up and manifest off the page, rushing to block Wayne's entry as Reese reveals a brand new face. He says we'll be okay, he just needs to take care of the doctor first, and then he leaves the room. We do have the option to call Tabitha, but she does not need this right now, and the doctor really should be warned, so we run off to find her. Oh, there she is. We duck at her prompting and she shoots a dart into Reese, who is more stunned by Wayne's sudden entry than the bare tranquilizer she just put in his chest. Reese darts away while his paintings hold our corpse companion in place, and we run off after Dr. Kelly, only to find her behind the steel door of a safe room. She speaks through an intercom and asks us to grab the elephant tranquilizers from the medical storage room, which we do. Reese appears in the doorway, his body even further transformed, and promises that he's only going to hurt his mom to prevent her from locking him away and poisoning him further. Reese and his mother argue over the intercom until Wayne appears and crushes his shoulder with one hand, prompting us to get moving. Darts in hand, Dr. Kelly opens the door for us, and now we can finally get some answers. Apparently Reese never had a father. Dr. Kelly just became pregnant one day after a string of what she calls romantic sleep paralysis episodes, and gave birth to what seemed at first to be a normal baby boy. But when he hit puberty, he began to change. He transformed once when they were arguing and would do so whenever he got mad, not even realizing it. She was terrified that he would transform in public one day and tear someone apart, so she took it upon herself to keep him medicated and docile while she looked for any kind of solution, a solution she would never find. I'm going to get into this later, but Reese does have every right to hate his mother for this. There's a world where they could have worked it out, but that is not the one we're living in. There is no right answer in this scenario, and I wouldn't blame anyone for siding with Reese here, but I didn't. I gave her the darts and spared her life, but at the cost of Reese's freedom. For the record, if you do side with Reese here, this is what he does to her. And no, despite that, I don't feel good about my decision. But again, it's the one I made, so it's the one I have to live with. She puts him under and locks him in the safe room for when he wakes up, then makes us promise not to tell anyone. She doesn't want him to be isolated, but she needs to be careful with who knows what because of the potential consequences. We swear to keep Reese's situation a secret, and then we leave. We're exhausted and it's time to head home. But then, who should show up but the militia, led by the Honourable Scraps? They found Stella and are ready to take us to her, which is the first good news we've heard all day and something we desperately needed. We follow and they take us to a bend on the road outside of town, where Stella sits on a log, staring mournfully out at the asphalt. She takes note of the militia and then goes right back to staring, and we have to beg her to talk to us, which she finally does. Stella's parents died right here. They were taking her to college when a semi collided with their car. Stella was mostly uninjured, but her parents were decapitated and she came to staring at their headless corpses. Stella is not okay and hasn't been since the accident. She has years of her life she can't recall and videos she doesn't even remember making for her channel, and she's never even talked with anyone about this. Stella has been stuck in place since the accident, unable to process her grief or even move forward with her life. For her, everything froze in the moment she lost her parents. She got into ghost hunting because of the accident, hoping to see her parents one last time, and when the haunting happened she ran back here, hoping to see them one last time, even if it meant they might be in a horrid state like Charles Shaw Jr. was, but they never appeared and she's been sitting here a full day, just waiting. In an effort to comfort our grieving friend, we pull her close and tell her that we can wait and see, just a little longer. Nothing happens, but that was never really the point. The point was to help our friend find closure. She has to accept that they're really gone, and on our advice, she agrees to start living for herself, like they would have wanted. We walk her home and she asks us if we'd like to come in, which would start a romance with her if you're so inclined, but I gently turned her down because I promised Tabitha I'd be there. Stella is disappointed, but she's still grateful that we were there for her, and she finally heads inside to get some sleep. If nothing else, we helped our friend today, and I think that's an achievement worthy of celebration. And then Wayne shows up again and says he'll walk us home. What a gentleman. You can talk with him about the events of the day and your discoveries, and you can even flirt with him here if you want. Oh boy, you mean I can flirt with the unknown entity piloting the rotting, pus-leaking corpse of my cousin's ex-boyfriend that's been stalking me for days and threatened the safety of my friend? How could I possibly say no? Don't mistake my sarcasm for judgment, viewer. You're absolutely welcome to romance Wayne if that's what does it for you. If you want to fuck the zombie, then you should go ahead and fuck the zombie. What's actually kind of funny is that despite my multiple playthroughs of this game, I've never actually romanced anyone. I've flirted, sure. I've even flirted with Wayne. But each time I play, I'm just like, sorry guys, I don't have time to date right now. I'm busy showing my cousin the love and kindness she was denied by the rest of our family. I am what the fandom has affectionately dubbed a tabby maxer. Anyway, Wayne continues his cryptic stalker bullshit and encourages us to explore the Forbidden Wing tomorrow so we can understand things better before he drops us off at home. And Tabitha greets us at the front door. She's been worried something bad happened to us or that we'd forgotten the ice cream plans. She had nothing to worry about though, because I would never miss out on cousin bonding time, to which she says she's kinda glad she won't be eating alone tonight. Tabby, please stop breaking my heart. She pulls out 2 pints of banana chocolate chunk and says, I'm sure there's a lot you want to talk about, but we're both here. We're both safe and we both had a long week. Let's just exist together. And so we do. Simply 2 cousins in a moment of companionable silence. Despite everything, we can take comfort in our company. And in an all too brief moment of safety and rest. It may have been a hard day and we may have faced new horrors and struggled with our choices, but at least we have a sense of home, of belonging. For now at least, we can know we're in a place that's grown uniquely familiar and warm. And then we wake up in the Forbidden Wing the next day and everything changes for the worse. Ain't life a treat?
There's fire in my brain and I'm burning up. Oh my, oh my. Keep running for the sink, but the well is dry. Oh my, oh my.
I'd like to issue one final warning for people. Chapter 5 is full of revelations and huge potential changes depending on your decisions. If you'd like to play the game on your own terms without spoilers, this is your chance to hop off the video and go experience it for yourself. I hope it goes without saying that I cannot recommend this game enough. Okay? Okay. A lonely piano refrain echoes through your sleeping mind, almost a dream on its own, as it stops and starts with no rhyme or reason. But it can't be a dream, you realise, because you can still hear it even as you come to. And it's not the only strange thing about this morning. The piano stops as you open your eyes to an unfamiliarly cold and uncomfortable feeling, as well as 2 sets of big black eyes staring down at you and an unfamiliar ceiling beyond. It's Dustin and Dustin Mom, and we are not in our bedroom. Well, at least we wake up to our beloved possum friend, who we enthusiastically hail. He says that we've been kind to him, so he was worried when we got dragged away. Sorry, hold on, when we were what now? Dustin Mom adds that she was also worried for us, since she knows we went to the greenhouse on her behalf. We couldn't get Goat out, but it's the thought that counts. How very mom of her. Also, the 2 apparently tried to fight the scary human when they came to take us away, but our kidnapper wasn't scared of them, so they decided to keep watch over us all night. Yeah, so apparently Wayne dragged us off to the Forbidden Wing while we slept, which was fucking rude of him, and now we have no idea where the fuck we are or how to get back. But what we do have is a small friend who'll be keeping us company and making everything better. This is probably my favorite part of the entire game. As I said way back at the beginning, your choices do matter, and because we've repeatedly chosen to show Dustin and his mom kindness, he'll stick with us and ride on our shoulder while we explore the Forbidden Wing. This is the greatest thing ever. Look at him, look at my boy, look at my bestie. He gives us adoring looks from our shoulder. He has a running commentary about snacks and the best places to hide. Dustin is perfect and I love him, and when I die I'm leaving him both the estate and my body. He deserves them both. Anyway, with our emotional support being on our side, we start to gain our bearings. Tattered wallpaper reveals a hidden door that's missing a knob, and peering through we can see our bed. So now at least we have a set goal. With knob on our mind, we head out to explore the Forbidden Wing properly. The place is an absolute mess. Doors are gone, the floor is broken in places, and dust drifts through the air. Walking into an ornate room reveals a painting of the town, or at least of certain landmarks. The church, the mines, a farm, the old city hall that was turned into the library, and so on. Reading the plaque, we learn it was made to commemorate Enoch's landmark revitalization project. Yet again, the plot thickens. From there, we step into what was once Enoch's office, which Dustin says is a good place for a nap. You're so smart, Dustin. Opening one drawer reveals a wax set that Dustin says is a tasty snack, and a picture of Teddy Scarlet that matches the man from our visions in the mines. The bottom drawer has a collection of small corked bottles that Dustin says are very tasty.
Tastes like old pond vintage.
Each bottle has a small slip of paper in them, and with our mystic senses we can actually read them through touch alone. Each one is a letter from Enoch to one of 2 women, Maeve or Verona. He's been using these bottles to reach out to the women for help, and it doesn't take much work to recognize that one or both of these women is the witch, as he mentions having to deal with the boy she sent. We step back into the hallway to continue our search, but Mom calls for Dustin to come back and not follow us. Dustin says he'll be safe with us, but Mom says she knows what's best for him, and he eventually relents, leaving us to go join his mom, and oh my god, look how small he is! Dustin says he hopes we'll be okay, and Mom cautions us to be careful, as where we're going always smells like hurting. and then they toddle off back to the dresser, leaving me to hopefully eventually find a hole big enough to squeeze through.
Aw, bye Dustin, I'll miss you.
Now alone, we head up the stairs and find another hallway with a few different doors and a window at the end. Approaching the window is not recommended for anyone with vertigo, as it looks over the fucking cliff the manor is hanging off of, so we move the boxes in front of the first door and head inside there instead. It's a child's bedroom, and an eerie one at that. We search the desk and at first all we find are the bills and Edwardine's name, but under those we find something truly disturbing. Birthday cards. Some open, some not, but each and every one was sent to Tabitha from her father. And reading them reveals that he'd been sending them to her every year. He talks about how he misses her, how big she must have gotten, and how much he wants to see her, how he'd see things that made him think of her and how much he loves her. Tabitha thinks her father wants nothing to do with her, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Perlan lied to her cousin for her entire life, and while I will be coming back to this later, I think the reason why is pretty obvious. Control. We pocket a few cards and check out the closet, and aside from discovering Perlan probably never bought Tabitha new clothes even once, we also find a box with a small sailor uniform in it, along with a frankly disturbing note encased in plastic that reads, "Mommy, I am in here too and I love you." We throw the box back in the closet, feeling dirty and horrified by the implications. The next room clearly used to be a nursery at some point, a fucking long time ago, and as much as it would be great to leave and never look back, we do need to understand what's happening, so we'll look around. But you know, under duress. The bookshelves paint a rather sad picture of what it was like for generations of Scarlet children, denied joy or even affection and wishing only for the parents to show them even a hint of the love they were sure was there. Of course, we can't escape the horrors for long, as at the back of one of the workbooks we find a prompt that Alexandra completed as, "Today I talked to the boy in the wall." I don't want to be in the holler anymore, thanks. I'll just show myself out if it's all the same to you. Lovely pain room you have here. Wait, pain room? Yeah, although this room looks fairly inconspicuous, you can sense an oppressive and overwhelming sense of hurt that permeates the very air, threatening to choke you through your own empathy. This must be what Dustin Mom was referring to. It's not even a sense of death, it's something far, far worse. A deep loss like a festering scar upon the world itself. Moving the rug reveals not the reason why, but a piece of the puzzle. A ritual circle has been etched into the wood here, each symbol on the outer ring corresponding to a different carving we've encountered, all feeding into the center, an echoing, dominating ego radiating from that which lies within. We cannot stay here, so we move on, and then we encounter the door. It's just like the one we found with Tabitha, the locked door behind which the entity spoke. But this door has been wrenched open, the frame splintered and gouged in evidence of the innumerable escape attempts by whatever was locked within. We are called to bear witness, and so we step forward. A prison cell, a depraved jail of neglected humanity and unending torment, and evidence of an unimaginable malice towards whatever was held in there. The walls have been deeply scratched over the unknown years as the thing within desperately tried to escape. The very walls echo a howling pain, as if the stones themselves felt the misery of its occupants. And yet, three things stand out here. The doll from our room, its presence unsettling. The doorknob, our key back to the world we knew, and a name carved into the wall, a desperate message to whoever might see it. But what it says we cannot know, for it does not align with anything we have seen. And yet, we engrave it upon our mind, knowing that it needs to be seen. Whoever or whatever carved it into the wall did so with such a fervor that the stones are soaked with their blood. It needs to be seen. The tinkling of piano keys drifts through the air from down the hall, beckoning us forward. If we've come this far, why not a little further? Taking the brass knob, we continue on. There are answers here, we just need to find them. Wayne sits at the bench of a battered grand piano, pausing in his ministrations to stand and address us.
So, now you see it.
And then he steps forward, ready to answer our burning questions. Wayne was the prisoner in that room. He had been for a very long time, though clearly not always in this form. He's out of it now, but his freedom doesn't mean much, as the town itself is just as much a prison as the cell is, in some ways. He says that nobody can truly leave, that the town doesn't like letting go of its prisoners and always exacts a price. That can be changed though. It wasn't always like this and it was never meant to be. He reveals three more crucial bits of information. The words on the wall are a weapon for us to use. Tabitha is aware of all this, and locking us in that cell is the entire reason she brought us to the hole in the first place. And the witch holds the key to fixing things. We don't want to believe that second point, and even if we do, Tabitha wouldn't actually... She wouldn't, would she? But as for the third, something is wrong. The idea of who he's talking about is missing. Wayne says our memory has been manipulated, but that just because we can't remember, that doesn't mean it doesn't still exist. And with that, he leaves us to our search. We open the door back to our bedroom and make our way out. Episode 5 of Scarlet Hollow isn't the longest, but it is the most widespread chapter. From here there are multiple routes we can take depending on a vast array of the choices we've made, and more than ever, there is no one way to reach the chapter's conclusion. This is also the first chapter where you can be killed and end the story early. I'm not even going to try to cover everything, but I will cover a couple different routes you can take because they'll be relevant to the character analysis later. First, you can take Wayne's advice to not trust Tabitha and go straight for the witch, and if you do, you'll end up at the general store only to find it completely bricked over and forsaken with Miles nearby. Miles came to us for help because he and everyone else has forgotten Kanika. He doesn't even remember who she is, but he feels the emptiness where she should be, and we're the only person he can turn to. He points us to Julius's farm for answers and then heads off to process things. Alternatively, you can try to find someone you trust first. I went to talk to Oscar and found him in a bit of manic hyperfixation, smashing open the walls of the mayor's office to find hidden documents in an attempt to help us research more, all while ignoring his daughter's obvious distress. He also points us towards the farm, which is kind of starting to feel like a hint to something, but meh. Alternatively, you can head over to talk to Tabitha about what you found, and she's in her office polishing a rifle. Talking with her can go one of 4 ways. She shoots you and you die, she calls the cops on you and you get arrested, you can reach an impasse with her and she'll admit that she knew about the carvings the whole time and will take you to find the next one on the farm, or you can attempt to truly connect with her and bring her on your side for real. What's interesting is that if you want to just get through it quickly, you can just burst into tears and then tell her that her actions don't match up, which leads to her admitting that she does care about you, but everything is so complicated that she doesn't actually know what to do. This isn't the best result for your relationship, but it's not terrible either. However, if you manage to navigate the precarious pathway to breaking through to her, she actually breaks down crying and you get to truly understand her, after which she'll go with you to the farm. Unless you die, you will always end up at the farm, but who goes with you and what your relationship with him is will change depending on what you do. When I streamed this, we ended up talking to Miles, but the rest of this video will proceed under the assumption that Tabby went with us. As we step out of the office, Deputy Shit-for-Brains walks up and tries to arrest us for... well, he says suspicions, but all that actually means is he has no proof, and Tabitha lets him have it for being a fucking loser. Then he gets a call from the sheriff that has him rush off to the farm, and we hop in Tabby's car to follow suit. Dude drives like a maniac though, probably because nobody's going to arrest him for speeding, so he gets there way before us. When we arrive, we find Dr. Kelly talking to Bo's mom, because the farm is just the place to be right now, I guess. But that barely matters because the call from this stone is far stronger than any before it. Even standing this far away, we can barely focus on anything around us, and even Tabitha can feel the pull it has. Tabitha and Joan both try to stop us, but we ignore them and march right through the front door of Julius's house, only to be confronted with a grisly spectacle. The house is infested with a horrid mess of meaty roots that squirm through and around everything, and the corpse of the sheriff hangs from a spring-loaded axe that caught him right in the face. Apparently when the police said Julius set up traps around his home, they didn't know he put them on the inside as well. One deputy warns us while the other weakly calls up from the basement. Apparently he's been shot. Avery and Julius are both down there too, but none of them can leave as the roots are holding the door shut. It won't keep us out though. We're meant to be here, and we need only lay our hands on the door to be welcomed through, while Dr. Kelly panics about the lack of signal and her inability to help. We catch the briefest glimpse of the situation in the basement before the vision hits, and then we're gone. In it, Enoch confronts the witch for undermining him, to which she responds that he's trapped the town and should nullify the deal he made before things get worse. Enoch says that the entity is just unhappy and that he didn't think it would be so opinionated, but he plans to give it a less broken body to placate it. The witch, Verena, tries to convince him to change his mind and offers to fix the whole thing and even leave town, but Enoch accuses her of attempting to manipulate him and refuses, ending their partnership and prompting the witch to tell him that someday someone will be strong enough to do what needs to be done. She only need wait. We come to in the basement to find things even worse. To summarize, Julius once caught Sybil, who is the witch by the way, who would have fucking thought, doing something she shouldn't, and made a deal to keep her secret. What he got in return was a way to have a child that he otherwise couldn't because no woman in her right mind would come near this guy. To that end, he watered the other family's pumpkin with his blood so it would grow big and act as a womb. Then he stole it for himself, but was forced to break it open early because of Bo's interference, and his child came out incomplete and ravenous. It tried to attack him, but he locked himself in the basement, where he would have been able to contact Sybil via a message in a bottled spring water, but his son's tendrils blocked the drain, so he was shit out of luck until Bo came by and his son latched onto him. Julius then called Avery for their plant expertise to see if something could be done, but there was nothing they could do, so his plan is now to let Bo die to feed the child. Oh, and then he shot the officer when he came down into the basement. That part's not very important. There are multiple ways this can end, but if you don't have the proper trait save, then someone is going to die. If you take too long or choose not to do anything, Bo dies to the child. But if you choose to kill it yourself to save him, Julius will attempt to shoot you and Avery will dive in the way. They'll take the bullet for you and die, and then Julius will just kill himself. However, if you manage to tabby max to the fullest and don't have the trait save, Tabitha will make the decision for you and kill the child after calling it a parasite, and Avery will take the bullet for her. Bo will live, but will still lose Avery in the process. Once the child dies, the faucet unplugs and starts pouring water. Water only you and Tabitha can see, and the basement fills up entirely before everything changes. We take on a new perspective from the view of someone entirely different. Now we're living the memories of the witch. Long before she was Sybil, she was the mother of another. Her daughter came to her one day and warned of a prophetic vision that foretold a flood that would kill everyone they knew. As she was, Sybil wasn't strong enough to stop the catastrophe, but her daughter proposed a solution. Take her back, undo her existence and absorb her power, and she could save everyone. Sybil was reluctant, but her daughter convinced her that it was necessary and that she wouldn't truly be gone. So she agreed. She absorbed her daughter and stopped the tragedy, but in doing so erased her from the world. Nobody would remember her or ever know of her sacrifice. This would repeat over the long years, with a new vision of impending doom and a new daughter sacrificed each time. Plagues, wars, tyrants, and each time Sybil had a daughter on hand to consume. Starting from the third, she conditioned them to accept it, and this would continue until the collapse of the Shaw mine, where she refused and people died. She was at peace with that decision, ready to eventually die on her own and let the world continue on without her guidance, until Enoch approached and she foresaw the greatest string of catastrophes the world would ever witness as a result of his choice to bring the entity into the world. And whether she helps him or not, it will happen. Enoch has made the choice. But there was a single possibility. If she helped him to bring it, eventually she could find a way to devour it as well, and become so powerful that she'd never have to sacrifice another daughter again. But she would just need to sacrifice this one more, and then every daughter after as Enoch cheats the entity and wastes her time. There's always one more sacrifice. Coming back to ourselves, we find Kanika in the void. She tells us she's willing to sacrifice herself to give her mother the power to stop the entity and fix the town, and that it's the only way for her life to have any meaning. Okay, Kanika? Babe, I need you to start valuing yourself more. When we get out of here, I'm taking you to therapy. Lord knows you'll need it for a lot. Kanika defends her mother while you and Tabby argue with her, but something is wrong. Kanika? Where are your glasses? Aha, an illusion. Sybil, you sly bitch. Sybil says she'd hoped to get it done before we got here, but some part of her knew it would end up like this. She tells us she's doing what's best for everyone, that she's doing it to save us all, and she isn't lying. Sybil is speaking her truth, but her truth doesn't really matter. And if you recall, we have a weapon. We speak the word from the wall and it tears into her, the tapestry of her power laid bare. Now we choose what happens next. She tries to persuade us and even attempts to bribe us with power, intent on finishing her work no matter what. But I'm not here to entertain your desperate adherence to the sunk cost fallacy. Get symbolically vord, bitch. We pull the loose thread and the souls of Sybil's daughters reach out and grasp her before the tapestry closes, and only Kanika is left behind. The tables have turned, and now it's the daughter with the accumulated power. Kanika is confused and very concerned now that she has magic and no idea how to use it, but we assure her that we'll figure it out and welcome her to the Dead Moms Club. There, see Tabitha? It is funny. I mean, Sybil technically isn't dead, she's just a part of Kanika now, but whatever. With her power, Kanika takes our hands and we leave the void, coming to on the shores of Tetanus Lake, with Pastor Daniel calling for someone to help us. And that is all 5 episodes so far. Jesus fucking Christ. Whew, okay, take a second if you need to, and then let's talk about all of that.
Ashes, ashes, dust to dust. Tell me I am good enough. Only my curses all to rest. Make a mercy out of.
Scarlet Hollow is a game of many themes. Loss, trauma, fate, love, cycles, responsibility, inheritance, choice, how cool and fun it is to talk to animals. But the themes I'm most interested in, and therefore will be taking even more time of this already monstrously long video to talk about, are family and, in a broader sense, connection. Also trauma, but that's more of a byproduct of the discussion on the first. Every important character in the game struggles with these three concepts in one way or another, and it's through examining their relationships to them that we can come to truly understand the characters. I've been looking forward to this part all video, so let's start with Stella. Stella feels like a good starting point because after Tabitha, she's the first character most players will begin to build a relationship with. She's the easiest to start a friendship with, and the first you'll probably come to consider to be your friend at all. She's also the easiest to talk about because her issues are very front and center thanks to how the story is laid out. As discussed back in the episode 4 section, Stella was traumatized by the sudden and violent death of her parents, and when they died she was left adrift and isolated from anyone who could be there to comfort her. Kanika was at college studying to be a vet, Reese was in quarantine and being guarded by his mother, and Tabitha was being controlled by Perlan and kept busy by the mine, meaning Stella lost her entire support network all at once and had nobody to turn to. She had Gretchen in her YouTube career, but those were distractions from her pain, not ways to work through it, and as was established, part of the reason she got into ghost and cryptid hunting was because she wanted to see her parents again. Stella didn't process her grief. She didn't talk to anyone. She sat in a cycle of emotional stagnation until we came along and pulled her out of it. First by putting in the effort to find her, and then by dragging the truth out of her when we did. If you select the option to let her tell you on her own, she simply won't. Stella is a woman frozen in time. She hasn't moved past her parents, and she hasn't moved past her relationship with Tabitha, and it's only thanks to someone finally reaching out that she's able to move forward at all. As I said, her character arc is pretty front and center, so there really isn't much to unpack about her that wouldn't just be repeating points. But something I actually find very interesting is that the concept of freezing extends to her psychology as well. Something people tend to forget is that fight and flight are not the only fear responses. There are two more F's to consider: freeze and fawn. And the thing about a person's fear response is that it also tends to be the response to trauma as well, which is something we see in Stella throughout the game. Stella has a very strong freeze response. She freezes when the ditchlings attack in chapter 1, and she has a bad habit of dissociating when she's feeling uncomfortable, which is something we see her do multiple times during the dinner with the Kellys, and more often throughout the story if you're not very nice to her or say something mean about Gretchen. It may seem contradictory that Stella needs someone to push her into action when she's the most gung-ho about rushing into anything, but it's really not. By their nature, fear and trauma responses only occur in specific situations, and if they're not being triggered, then you're largely free to act as you normally would. Everyone is shaped by their experiences, especially traumatic ones, but the specifics of that shaping differs from person to person. One person might have their entire approach to life itself altered, but another might seem fine to the casual observer until someone or something triggers them. Stella isn't a bad person, despite what you might hear from some people, but she is a very lonely and emotionally vulnerable person desperate for connection, and sometimes she can be taken advantage of for that. Speaking of lonely, let's talk Avery. Avery is an interesting case because much like Stella, they at first appear to be just fine, and even up through most of episode 4, they seem to be entirely fine. A little too fine actually, as their blithely accepting attitude begins to feel a little off, and the reason for this is simple. Avery's unflappability and go with the flow attitude is self-protective in nature. Avery is an abuse victim with the fawn response. The fawn response is something a lot of people just don't take very seriously, either because they see it as mere people-pleasing or because they've fetishized it for the purpose of shitty storytelling. But it is just as much about survival as fight, flight, or freeze. Avery's relationship with their parents only really gets a passing mention when they say that they argued about Avery's education, but looking at their attitude and what they say about other things paints a pretty clear picture. Avery's parents rejected them. This is made most clear when they say that the pumpkin baby shouldn't come into the world attached to someone who doesn't want it, and how they move to the holler the moment Winnie offers them a job in a home. For whatever reason, Avery's parents abused and rejected them, and this had a massive impact on how they came to interact with people afterward. The thing about trauma responses, especially to abuse, is that they're very, very hard to let go of. They become an ingrained survival instinct, and even long after you're out of the situation that caused you to need them, you'll still struggle to move past the habits you formed from that. And this is where the fawn response comes in. People are less likely to hurt or reject you if you're agreeable and give them what they want. Avery likely spent years cultivating a reflexively accepting attitude because it meant their parents had less of a reason to harm them in any way. And the thing is, it still does serve them to a certain degree in the new home. People like Avery, they're friends with basically everyone, but this comes at the cost of real connection because it's always shallow. Nobody gets to know the real person behind all that agreeableness, and it's something they struggle with. They fully admit that they feel like an outsider, and they don't have any real friends to speak of. The only person they're actually close to is Winnie, and the only other person who truly values their friendship outside of us is Julius, a man so terminally lonely he had to cultivate a baby to give himself a reason to live. The thing about Avery is that unless you invite them, they just do not take part in the story at all. You become their only point of connection. You're the only person to include them in anything, and so they come to treasure you for it. Avery is so lonely and they want to connect to people, but even if you set aside the whole southern small town thing, they really struggle to form a deeper relationship with anyone because their survival instinct has made them reflexively passive and accepting, which means they can't really pursue anything deeper for fear of rejection. Avery coming to see us in episode 4 is likely the most they've imposed their own desire on anyone since they arrived in town, which is honestly kind of heartbreaking. Avery is so anxious for connection that they're actually happy to have experienced the haunting because it means they have a shared trauma that ties them to the group. Do you know how desperately lonely you have to be to welcome pain and trauma if it means connecting you to someone else? I think it's rather poignant that during the haunting, Avery ends up the actor for the entity, because it too was brought here from another place and doesn't truly belong. And it has also spent a very long time isolated from the world until we arrive. If you go back and look at the role each character was placed into, you'll find them very fitting indeed. To be blunt, Avery's parents fucked them up. We don't have the full story yet, and we'll be getting more in the upcoming episodes, but everything we know about Avery really does paint them as a truly tragic figure. Someone so hurt they'll even offer themselves up to the baby if you try to kill it, because the thought of a child being rejected is just too much to bear for them. They deserve so much more than what they've been given, and I really hope this explanation will help dissuade people from disparaging them for what happens in episode 5. Existing in parallel to Avery, Oscar is a parent that desperately wants to be needed. Oscar is a single father trying his best, but he's not exactly prepared for the rigors of raising a teenager, and it's something we see him struggle with throughout the game. More specifically, we see him struggling with reconciling Rosalina's growing independence, as she's at the age where she doesn't need to rely on him as much and is fully capable of acting on her own, with the fact that she is also still a child who relies on him for care and support. Oscar has to be repeatedly told, and even by Rosa himself, that she makes her own decisions and is subject to the consequences of her own actions. And while most parents tend to love seeing their children growing more independent, Oscar ties a lot of his self-worth into being useful and feeling needed, which is at odds with his goals as a parent. Oscar and Rose's mother had her when they were only 19, and her mother left them after she realized she wasn't ready to raise a child and eventually married a lawyer, which likely wasn't meant to be a personal attack on Oscar, but it also likely caused him to believe he wasn't good enough. All of these things have given Oscar a pathological need to feel needed and useful, and this is something that we see come to a head in episode 5. While we don't know the full extent to what the stones do to people, one thing we do see is that proximity to them tends to amplify negative traits and heighten strong emotions, which happens to both Oscar and Reese, and probably happened to Julius as well since he's lived on top of the thing for fuck knows how long. When we find him, Oscar has become completely fixated on his research being helpful, to the point that he's even ignoring his own daughter. Rosa can't get through to him and he's not feeding her, and he doesn't even care when she tells him she took money from his wallet to go buy food. You can bring it up to him and he'll wave it off with a comment about how it's good she's being independent. He's completely incapable of seeing that his daughter needs him now and is clearly hurting because he sees us as someone who needs him more and her as someone who doesn't right now. It's a very sad sight because normally Oscar is an incredibly loving and attentive father, but his supernaturally driven fixation has caused him to neglect his only daughter. Of course, need is subjective and we don't always know what's best for another person, which is the case with Reese and Dr. Kelly. As mentioned earlier, Reese was completely unexpected and basically the result of Dr. Kelly fucking her sleep paralysis demon. She tried to be a good mom, but then he started changing and yeah, you know how the story goes, you just heard me tell it. The situation here is kind of complicated though because from her perspective, everything Dr. Kelly does is her taking responsibility for the life she brought into the world. She loves her son, but sees him as a danger and feels that as his mother, it's her duty to ensure he doesn't hurt anyone. When you're locked in the safe room with her, you can suggest that Reese should have been killed, and she actually admits that she tried, but poison didn't work and she couldn't bring herself to actually physically harm him, so she had to look for an alternate solution. She actually got the medicine that kept him from transforming from Sybil, since she didn't know how to handle whatever the fuck he was, which is what led to the entire situation with him seemingly having a chronic debilitating illness. The situation between the two is a literal tragedy because it truly did not have to be this way. Abby Howard, one of the pair behind the game, has confirmed that if they talked about it and worked through it, then they could have figured something out. But that's not the choice Joan Kelly made, and so this is the timeline we're stuck with. If you have the hot trait, you can talk Reese down, he won't kill his mother and he'll run off into the woods, and Joan will admit the situation is at least partially her fault for how she chose to handle it. Reese has every right to be angry with his mother, and she knows that. But she made the choices she made, and now they're living with the consequences. I don't really have a good segue for this, but I want to talk about Julius because the man is a very interesting case of someone who should have never been a parent ever at all. Unlike Oscar, who wasn't ready for a kid, or Avery's parents who rejected them, Julius very obviously wants a kid. But the reason he wants one is steeped in self-interest and a misogynistic mindset. To that first point, Julius wants a kid because he thinks it'll give him a reason to live. He says he's always wanted a boy, but he never got to have one, so this is him getting what he believes he's owed. How charming. More to the point though, you may be wondering why I claimed he's misogynistic. That's a little more complicated, but the simplest answer is that it's about control. Misogynists are obsessed with the feminine ability to give birth. It's practically what they base the entire purpose and identity of a woman around. But when it comes to misogynistic men, the obsession isn't just about women giving birth, but the idea of mastering it and beating women at their own game. They have this ideal of the creation of life that's utterly sterile and in control, where they can add only the parts of themselves to the resulting being without any part that they don't like, and without any sacrifice or pain on their end. It ties into the attitude that while mothers must have a connection to their children and give up their lives for them, fathers are simply owed a stake in their offspring as a result of having contributed. It's about ownership, not love or the things expected of a loved one. This is a borrowed observation from the Morbid Zoo, by the way. You should go watch her stuff, she's really good. You can see this in how Julius goes about having his pumpkin baby. He bargains with a witch for the power to have his own baby, waters the pumpkin with his blood, and then claims it as his own. But he's not the one who grew it or tended to it or even attempted to associate with it. It just contains a part of him, and to him, that means it's his. It's there in how he talks about it too. He acts as if he has perfect knowledge of the process of creation, even talking down to Tabitha, the actual woman in the room, about how babies work and how they're made. Most of all though, he's not willing to risk himself for the kid. He was in danger, so he ran and hid and just stands around and waits while Bo acts as a surrogate mother to the parasite he created. You can call him out on this and he'll straight up admit that he's not going to risk his life for it. If you have street smarts, you can actually convince him to take his son off Bo, and there's two ways you can go about it. Either he takes the burden on by himself and dies for the child, or he and Avery share the burden and nobody dies. Either way, he isn't strong enough to carry the baby to term by himself, and it's rather poignant. I honestly don't think Julius would make a good parent, but you know who he'd still be better than? Fucking Sybil. The Forsyth family has the single most fucked up familial situation in the whole of the game, second only to the Scarlet family, and that's only because there's so many more Scarlets whose suffering is involved. And all of it comes down to the fact that Sybil abuses her children. As we saw earlier, Sybil has a long history of consuming her children for power. It may have started as the decision of the first daughter, but it did not stay that way, and it's only grown worse as the years continue. Sybil is the fucking poster child for the road to hell being paved with good intentions. She has spent centuries of her life raising daughters as sacrificial lambs for the purpose of her greater good, and it has fundamentally changed not just how she sees her children, but the people of the world around her. The thing about Sybil is that she is entirely incapable of truly connecting to people anymore. Everyone and everything merely exists as a means to an end. That doesn't mean she's purposefully cruel, but it does mean that she only really cares about someone as far as they can be of use to her. She'll play the role of a mother or a caretaker or a fortune teller or whatever she believes people will find helpful, but the moment someone gets in the way of her goal, then she will not fucking hesitate. And this is something we see with how she handles Kanika. Sybil made a habit of raising her daughters to sacrifice themselves, but this ended up conflicting with her most recent husband, who encouraged Kanika's independence and dreams and was the entire reason she left for college. So Sybil killed him. She poisoned him so he'd appear to die from an illness, and Kanika would be forced to come home and help run the shop and take care of Miles. And she did this because he only mattered so far as he could give her a daughter. And well, he already fulfilled that purpose. Sybil spends the game repeatedly controlling Kanika, either through authority or magic. In episode 4, she actually uses magic to make Kanika sick just before your tea reading, and she does this so her daughter is easier to manipulate when it's time to consume her. We also see that her conditioning has been effective, as in the Void, Kanika will tell you that this is the only way for her life to be worth anything. She truly does believe that she has no value as a person outside of being a sacrifice, but that's simply not true. Not only because we care about her, and not simply because any life has value, but because Miles still loves her and still needs her there. That's the entire reason he approaches us at all, because he can't stand the thought of losing another person he loves. I think it would be very easy for people to write Miles off as just benefiting from his mom taking his side against his sister and not caring, but that's really not the case because Miles is just as much a victim of abuse as his sister is. It's just not as obvious because the signs of emotional neglect are easier to miss. And make no mistake, neglect is absolutely a form of abuse. The thing about parental abuse is that it never affects just the one child. The most commonly known dynamic is the golden child scapegoat, but that's not what's going on here. Because Sybil has no use for Miles outside of his incidental role in increasing Kanika's responsibilities, she simply leaves him alone. And that means she doesn't play the role of a mother for him, not as a nurturer, not as a disciplinarian, not as anything. I think a lot of people will see Miles breaking rules and getting away with it and being apathetic and snarky as just him being a sulky teenager, but it really isn't. These actions are a direct response to his mother neglecting him. Kids and teens aren't as ignorant as people like to think. They can tell when something's not right in a relationship, even if they aren't able to articulate exactly what it is. And if they're lacking something, they'll act in ways to redress the balance. While it may seem appealing to not have your mother punish you for misbehaving, for Miles that would only serve to reinforce the fact that his mother doesn't really care what he does or what happens to him. So he goes out of his way to inconvenience her. He neglects the store, he runs off to the mines, he is rude and apathetic and just doing anything he can to prompt the kind of reaction he knows she should have. But because she doesn't care and actively benefits from how it stresses Kanika out more, she does fucking nothing and both children suffer for it. If you ask her about Miles while in the Void, she outright dismisses him with, "I've had other children before, he'll be fine." I need to make this clear, neither child is at fault for how the other is treated or feeling. They both see the other receiving a benefit that they aren't getting, and it drives a wedge between them and causes them to fight, and this benefits Sybil's goals. It's fucking terrible and this woman is entirely to blame. There is no excuse for the pain she causes people, and she causes a lot of people a lot of pain over the course of her life with just how much she's influenced the events of the game. And no amount of "it's for the greater good" argument can make up for that. The thing about the greater good is that it is a completely nebulous outcome that only fanatics can cling to, because its only purpose is to justify your actions no matter how wrong they actually are. Sybil tries to frame her actions as being utilitarian in design, but they're actually egocentric by nature. Everything has to come back to her. She has to be the one to set things right. She has to be the one to prevent things. She has to be the one to make sure the world doesn't break. She has to be the one holding the power. Hell, the music that plays during her memory is titled "A World Without You There to Guide It," which I think says a lot about how her mind works. I mentioned the greater good only being viable to fanatics, and that's entirely applicable to Sybil. She is fanatically devoted to her cause due to the sunk cost fallacy and its self-protective in nature. She needs to see the path she's on as the only potential outcome ever, because otherwise she'd have to confront the fact that all the pain she caused and the lives she snuffed out were ultimately for nothing, and that would break her. And to that end, she's cultivated a mindset where she's the only real person to exist. This is why, at least to my understanding, the people of her flashbacks are all wooden marionettes. It's not just delusions of grandeur. She needs to reduce people down to the roles they play in her story to live with what she's done. This is also why the only daughter she ever resists consuming after the first is the one with green eyes, because she's the first to remind her of herself. She's the first to feel like a real person, and Sybil still erased her for power. The thing is, Sybil is so destructively locked into a cycle of her own creation that she's entirely blind to any other potential solution to the problems she faces. She could have taught her daughters to become powerful witches and given her power to them. She could have simply killed Enoch and stopped him from summoning the entity at all. Hell, she could have simply stepped back and accepted that things are out of her control and that you simply cannot save everyone. But no, she has to be the one in control. She has to be the one guiding the world. And though she may have saved many lives over her years, the pain she's caused, even to just her own family, is unquantifiable. Besides, there is no hypothetical greater good that I would sacrifice my friend for, or anyone I love for that matter, which is what finally brings us to Tabitha and really, the Scarlet family as a whole, because that is what lies at the center of everything. The sorry tale of the Scarlets lies at the heart of the game, and the core of the conflict revolves around a cycle of generational trauma and abuse and the breaking thereof. And everything starts with Enoch, who may not have been the first Scarlet of note, but who was the progenitor of the pain that would come to consume both his family and the whole of the Holler. Enoch was a heartless man who valued profit over all else, which is why he used a compromised shipment of wood in the Shaw mine and then blamed his business partner for the collapse, and also why he set about summoning the entity at all, to ensure the continued success of the mine and the fortune of his family. Though we don't know the full extent of the terms of his contract with the being he summoned, nor the full extent of the effect it has, especially since he cheated the entity in some way. What we do know is that the deal supposedly saved Scarlet Hollow at the cost of one Scarlet being locked away and bound in the cell in the Forbidden Wing by magic. For the deal to be kept, there must always be a Scarlet running the mines and a Scarlet locked away, and this deal is the foundation upon which the abuse and misery of the Scarlet family is built. The first Scarlet he locked away was his own brother, and he made sure that every generation after would be just as willing to sacrifice their children for the sake of the town. The supernatural ramifications of everything he did are something we can only really speculate on at this point, but the consequences to his family are something we see very clearly through the course of the game. Checking the medical records, there are more than a few that appear falsified in some way, and it's pretty obvious that this was to ensure people thought they simply died and didn't go looking for the family members locked away in the Omelas hole. Of course, not everyone would be born as heartless as Enoch. Not every Scarlet would naturally be willing to throw a family member into a life of eternal torment and possession by an unknown entity, which is why Enoch had to cultivate a family environment of misery and capitalist thinking. We can see from the nursery that they were raised from a young age with very little love shown or joy given, and that's because they were being groomed by their parents to either inherit the mine or be thrown away. An emotional connection to your children would only make the eventual goodbye harder, so they were trained to not get attached. This is what happened to the boy in the wall, and what happened to Alexandra, and what would have happened to whoever came next after that. It is a self-perpetuating cycle of intergenerational trauma and abuse that breeds terrible people who will do terrible things, and we can see the direct impact it has on the family through our interactions with Tabitha. Tabitha is, by all metrics, an objectively miserable person. She lives a life she doesn't want in a town she's never left, surrounded by people who hate her at a job she's never liked. And that's just how awful things are at the present moment. Tabitha's entire life has been controlled by either her obligations or her mother, and her mother was by far the worst of the two. Perlan was a fucking monster who abused her daughter non-stop through such brutal and authoritarian parenting that Tabitha isn't even sad when she's dead. And all of it was in service of controlling her and taking out the woman's own misery on a daughter that couldn't fight back. Perlan went to great lengths to isolate Tabby from the people around her so that she'd be easier to control. She lied about her father and hid his letters. She forced her to break up with Stella and kept her too busy to see her again, and pressured her to date men from the mine that she didn't like so she would have a child with someone she had no emotional connection to, so Tabitha would repeat her actions. And when Tabitha grew close to Wayne, the actual Wayne and not the entity that now pilots his cadaver like a rotting suit of power armor, Perlan killed him and the entity settled in his corpse. She pushed Tabitha so much that Tabby eventually took her out James Sunderland style and pretended it was sleep apnea. And Perlan did this because that's how she was raised and how she intended to have Tabitha raise her own children. And on top of all of that, she kept Tabitha locked in place with an ingrained sense of doomed responsibility. If you break through to Tabitha in episode 5 and cause her to finally break down and cry, she admits to everything. She says that the family has done horrible things, but that they were done for a reason, to uphold the family legacy and the entire economy of the Holler. The town is built around those mines. The work there is what allows most people there to eat and afford housing. And it's not just the miners, it's their families, their children. It supports entire generations with its output, and all of it depends on her to keep it running, to keep people from starving, to keep the town alive. And all it costs is the suffering of a handful of people, a handful of Scarlets. And so Tabitha asks herself every day, isn't that suffering worth it if it keeps everything going for just a little bit longer? Isn't her suffering worth it? Isn't ours? There's a moment in the game that always stuck out to me, but until chapter 5 I was never really able to articulate why it felt so important. And it's during the conversation you have with Tabitha in her office in episode 2. When you try to talk to her about the ditchlings, she brushes them off because they don't matter as much as making sure the mine keeps running. And she says she'll do whatever it takes to see that happen. Who cares if you two saw Harbinger of Doom? I see that every day. Enoch has created the perfect prison for his family out of the town of Scarlet Hollow. Setting aside the supernatural and the abuse for a moment, what he's done to ensure the wealth and legacy of the family has chained each and every Scarlet to the Sisyphean task of keeping a failing industry alive to ensure their workers can survive. He has turned the livelihoods of everyone in town into a cage of responsibility that eats them all alive, knowing that their suffering is all that maintains the town at all. It is a self-perpetuating machine of intergenerational abuse, fueled by guilt over the people that rely on them. This is what Tabitha is trapped in, and it's very nearly perfect. Generational trauma and familial abuse are often extremely hard to escape from because very often people take the attitude that it should just remain unaddressed to avoid further conflict. And this in turn can create a building resentment that rots people from the inside out and leads to them inflicting the same pain they went through on their own partners and their own children. Sometimes without realizing it, but just as often with the justification of, I went through this, so you have to as well. Though you're more likely to hear it phrased as something like, well, my daddy beat me and I turned out fine. But we all know this isn't an excuse. No amount of pain or abuse you suffer will ever excuse you hurting someone else, especially not someone who loves and relies on you like your own family. And that's the thing, this kind of cycle is not absolute. It can be broken, but someone has to be the first to change. Someone has to be the first to say, this will not continue. And for the Scarlet, that someone was Vivian. While having your reading done with Sybil, you can ask her about your mother, and she reveals that Vivian came to her when she found out she was pregnant, terrified and desperate for advice, which eventually led to her leaving the holler and moving to her hometown to have you. And while I think you could very easily argue that she left to avoid being put in the cells and she was very clearly the scapegoat of her household, I don't think that's the whole of it. I think Vivian left because she didn't want her child to be subject to the horrors of the Scarlet family like she and everyone before her had been, which is why she paid whatever price it is the town exacts to leave and never come back. She wanted to save us from the miserable life that awaited us should we have stayed. She didn't want her child to grow up to be a sacrifice. The relationship you have with your mother is somewhat up for the player to decide. When chatting with Stella about her on the trail, you have a few options to choose from, and one of them is that you're glad to see her gone. But what is very certain is that Vivian spent a lot of time absolutely hating on her family back in the holler, and Tabitha makes it clear that Perlan did the exact same thing, shit-talking you and your mother any chance she got. It's very clear that neither sister ever let go of her resentment. Vivian never forgave her family for how they treated her, and Perlan never forgave Vivian for leaving and messing everything up. And she was also probably jealous her sister had the courage to leave, but that's neither here nor there. Neither mother ever got over her hatred, but while Perlan did everything she could to frame us in a way that Tabitha would hate us on sight and lock us up the moment she could if we ever showed our faces, Vivian at least partially seemed to be trying to discourage us from ever going back there in an attempt to keep us safe. There was, at the very least, real love for us in Vivian's actions, while Perlan was incapable of ever demonstrating anything similar to Tabitha. And that's where we come into the picture, because for Tabitha, we change everything. Tabitha's entire life was controlled by Perlan in an attempt to groom her into becoming the perfect Scarlet, by sabotaging her relationships and burying her under responsibility as a sacrifice to the family legacy. That's ultimately how the deal works. All Scarlets are sacrifices to Enoch's vision. She may not have ended up in the Room of Eternal Torment, but she's just as much a prisoner to the family that Teddy and Alexandra were. Anything that might have brought her joy was stripped away. Anything that might have given her another purpose was removed. And Perlan worked so hard to abuse Tabitha into the perfect mind boss that it ultimately became too much, and Tabitha killed her in retribution for all the misery inflicted upon her. But even then, she's still not free. She's still stuck running the failing mine, still exploiting her workers because she literally cannot afford to pay them more, and Perlan's grasp on her is so powerful that even after the woman is dead, she still can't comprehend that her life isn't being controlled anymore, at least not directly. Tabitha isn't a good person, but she didn't have as much of a say in who she'd be as she should have. And then we came along and things just began to fall apart, not just from the supernatural events, but from who we ended up being. Although Tabitha talks about the importance of family, we are legitimately the first to show her what a real family should be like. We're kind and supportive, and while we frustrate her to no end at first, she can't help but come to legitimately care for us because she sees that we care about her. No other member of the family has ever just wanted to spend time with her, to get to know her and show her any degree of kindness. Tabitha's reaction to being told that we miss her and want to hang out again is so heartbreaking because that might be the first time anyone but Stella has ever said anything like that to her. And she's known us for less than a week. In 4 days, we've become the single most important person in the world to her, and it shows in how she acts. She was planning to lock us into the cell from the beginning. That's the only way to ensure the deal is being met and the town is being saved again. But if she plans to do that, then why did she sacrifice her own years to the ghost in our place? Why does she risk her life to come to our rescue when we call for help? It would be so much easier if we were weaker or too hurt to fight back, but here we are, having ice cream with her and just enjoying each other's company. And here she is, being happy around a family member for the first time. It's worth noting that Tabitha's dream for a different life is incredibly mundane. Work as a bank teller, go to the beach, just a life completely bereft of responsibility to other people and her family's influence. This house is her secret spot because it contains the dream of loving domesticity, because just for a little while, she can pretend that she has a simple life filled with love. The reason the talk with her in episode 5 is so precarious is because our cousin's internal conflict has reached a critical breaking point where her love for us and her ingrained dedication to the family are locked in a standstill, and we are the final push to either side. You can't just walk in and start accusing, and you can't just try to reason her out of her course of action because she's been justifying everything to herself for so long that mere logic can't sway her anymore. But if you walk in and start crying, then she visibly panics, because despite what she needs to do to you, she's not heartless. She can't just ignore the distress of the person she's grown to care about. Tabitha was prepared for us to be everything her mother said we were, and thought that she was ready to do what needed to be done. But the one thing she could never be prepared for was for us to be kind. She was not prepared to actually like us. The moment that really stands out to me is when you start to get through and she halts the conversation in obvious distress at the thought that you might hate her. And while she says, "If you wish you'd never come here, say it," what she means is, "If you wish you'd never met me." It's so hard to get to this point because Tabitha is weighing what's been the purpose of her entire life, weighing the justification she's told herself to make her own suffering and the things she's had to do worth it, against her love for you. And all of them crumble away at the realization that despite everything she's done and still might do, you're still willing to be there for her. In the face of the love and kindness you show her, the very things she was denied by her own mother, Tabitha also chooses to change. She chooses her family, the first real family she's ever had, over the legacy that defined her entire life. Someone has to be the first to change. Someone has to be the first to say, "This will not continue." And then someone has to be the first to reach out, to show kindness where there was none before. And in doing so, they can save a life. I need to be clear about this. You will never have any obligation to forgive your abusers, even if they're family. You do not need to show them kindness or forgiveness to grow or move on or even to be a good person. But do not let what you've been through make you unkind to those who don't deserve it, because you might find they needed that kindness just as much as you did. Tabitha is such a good character. She's complicated and messy and tainted and lonely, and she eats nothing but ice cream and macaroni and PBJs, so she's got to be at least as physically constipated as she is emotionally, and she still deserves to be shown kindness, I think, just like everyone else. The world of Scarlet Hollow is deeply complicated and can go so many different ways, and what's important to remember is that the world does not turn on you. The world does not wait for you to be ready to face what's next in the story, and the characters do not exist solely to sate your curiosity. Managing relationships and events isn't as simple as choosing the right dialogue option, because every character is their own person, and the tragedies are not for you to dictate. Characters have their own agendas and desires, and they will do what they think is best. Sometimes even what they think is best for you, and you will not always be able to stop them. But that's part of what makes them people. It's part of what makes them who they are. Nowhere is this more true than with Wayne, who is such an obvious analog to an abusive stalker that you can only really miss it if you're actively choosing ignorance. Wayne claims to be the only one who truly cares about us, constantly undermines a growing relationship with our cousin, follows us, ignores our wishes, threatens our friends, kidnaps us, and if you flirt with him in episode 5, he actually puts you in an altered state that makes you more susceptible to his suggestions, but he's also not remotely human. Wayne may have more red flags than you have dead relatives, but he's also an otherworldly entity with a completely different understanding of how things work and a lack of human morals. He protects us from things he considers to be threats and truly believes the two of you have a uniquely absolute connection. So he's willing to be patient and wait if you start to romance someone else, because what is a human relationship to whatever the fuck he thinks you have? Though he can still get jealous, because if you romance Stella, you explore the Forbidden Wing with her, and he calls her a slattern, which is so fucking funny to me for some reason. It's like the Real Housewives of the 1600s. Likewise, you can't always find the right path through a tragedy to get a happy ending, but that's what makes life. Sometimes bad things just happen, and you do your best to handle them, and then you have to live with the consequences of your choices. If you're familiar with Black Tabby's last game, Slay the Princess, then you're aware that they have an interest in the concept of choice. But while Slay the Princess was a game with no wrong answers, Scarlet Hollow is a game with no right ones. You will be forced to make hard decisions with no right answer, and life will continue on after, and you will have to live with the choice you made, and the world will change based on what you've done. Your traits can help to even things out, but just as in real life, you won't always be the person who can make everything alright. If you were stronger, maybe you could save both Duke and Gretchen. If you were keener, maybe you could rescue everyone in the mine. If you were smarter, if you were more charismatic, if you were more aware, more attuned, if you were just more, then maybe things would be different. But you can't save everyone, no matter how hard you try. But none of this means that your choices don't matter. None of this erases the impact you have on the people around you. And while everything you do has a consequence, the greatest decision you will ever make in this game is the choice to be kind. Your kindness saves the people around you in ways that still matter. You help Stella to grieve and find connection. You give Oscar and Rosalina their home again. You tell Kanika she mattered and you bring her back to her brother. You give Avery a place to belong and people to connect to. And you save people's lives and you give Tabitha the family she was denied for so long. Because even if you mess up, even if you can't save everyone, you can still make the world a better place. You can still be a light in the darkness of the holler that people find solace in, even during a time of upheaval and doom. Or you can choose the opposite if you prefer. You can be cruel and callous and petty and spit upon the people around you if that's your thing. You can be every bit the Scarlet that people expect you to be, and the characters will react accordingly. It's your choice to make after all. You have your own agenda, just as everyone else does. But that's the beauty of this game, I think. That your choices really do matter, and that the story does change depending on who you decide to be. Perhaps the biggest consequence of the game is that after playing, every other Choices Matter game will feel feeble and impotent in comparison. The game has been in early access since 2019 for a damn good reason, and that's because Black Tabby are truly dedicated to writing out every possible reaction to you as a player and making sure the world retains its logic and forward path as decided by your choices. Please give this game a try. It is a product of love and passion and insane writing talent, the likes of which you will rarely ever see, and it deserves so much more attention. And that is, among so fucking many other reasons, why you should play Scarlet Hollow. Oh my god, it's finally done. Thank you so fucking much to anyone who watched this far and gave this monster of a video a chance. And a huge thank you to my patrons for being so patient with me as I worked on this passion project. It's always a huge risk to take so much time for big videos like this, and I honestly just cannot thank them enough for allowing me to make this. I really do hope I've convinced at least someone to give this game a try. I love it so fucking much, and I just want more people to support it and enjoy it and talk about it. And oh my god, I'm so tired. The script for this was 50 pages long, and I wrote most of it in 1 week. I'm so proud of this video, and I hope you liked it, and I hope you liked the game, and I'm rambling, so I'm gonna just pack it in. Oh my god, fuck. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I really do hope you liked it. Have a wonderful whenever it is, and I'll see you in the next much fucking smaller video. Okay, bye.